John,
Is the mic on?
John,
Hello.
can we start, please? John, thank you.
Mics are on. Again, I'd like to call the September 10, 2024 council meeting to order. If you could all please join me in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll? Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Berner. Mr. Heidingsfelder.
Here.
Ms. Kay. Okay. Mr. Farrell.
Here.
Ms. Fullerson. Mr. Boone.
We will wait and try to make sure that Councilmember Kay is able to join us remotely. Unfortunately, Councilmember Berner is on a flight across the big pond and is not able to be with us today, either remotely or in person. Do we know what the issue is? Okay.
Okay, do you have me on?
Good afternoon, Councilmember Kay. Can you hear us?
I can. Can you see me?
No, but hear you.
Okay, so I am, hey, Stephanie, can you do me a favor and send this link to my personal computer?
Yes. Will do.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Madeline, I just sent it.
Thank you. And for some reason, because I send it from my town computer to about 5 times to my personal computer and it's not getting in. All right, we may have to just deal with, let's see if I can make this video work. Okay, can you guys see me?
Yes, we can.
All right, I'm giving up on my personal computer. We'll do it this way.
And did she respond to the roll? No. I see her. Okay. Okay. Thank you. The first item of business is approval of minutes. The council members have been provided a copy of the minutes of the Town Council Special Call hearing of July 2nd, 2024. I provided the clerk with a couple of cleanup items. Are there any other changes to the minutes of the July 2nd Special Call hearing? If not, the minutes are adopted. The minutes of the Town Council meeting of July 2nd, 2024 have been provided to council members. I also provided a couple of cleanup items to the clerk. Are there any further changes to
Are they
those
substantial or just
Pardon?
typos?
Pardon?
Are these substantial changes or just typos?
They're not typos, but they are relatively minor changes. We can certainly welcome to have the clerk read those changes if you would like.
No, I'm just asking, are
Okay.
they substantial or are they just typos?
They are not typos.
Or if I need to explain
They're
that more.
minor grammatical or editorial. Any further changes to the minutes of the July 2nd, 2024 Town Council meeting? If not, the minutes are approved. Minutes of the special call meeting of August 2nd, 2024 have been circulated. I don't believe I provided any changes to the clerk regarding those. Any other changes that any council members have? If
None
not,
for me.
If not, the minutes for the August 2nd special call meeting are approved. The next agenda item.
Can I ask, I have a few comments to content in these meeting minutes. You want me to make them now? or-
certainly, yeah.
Okay. So first of all, I think all of these meeting minutes in recent months have become extremely well. They have improved so substantially, Petra, or Madam Clerk, that I really want to make sure that we recognize what a great job she's doing in keeping the facts documented. So this is outstanding. It's a really notable improvement over the last 2 years. As it relates to the meeting minutes or the meeting itself, the special call hearing on July 2nd related to the revocation of a business license.
Apologies.
Okay. So my first question would be to the mayor about a topic that we actually raised during that special call meeting related to 385 Green Widget Teal Road, the business license revocation for short-term rentals. So you mentioned in the meeting, and I think we all kind of agreed, that we probably need to revisit our short-term rental ordinance to make sure that we don't run into the same problem again, that only because of one renter in 3 consecutive days, I believe it was, can drive the revocation of a business license of a property owner on our island. So what's the status 2 months later?
There has been no change in the status. We need to revisit with council, which we have not yet done so, broader changes because there's some inconsistency. It was cited by the town attorney at that time between the provisions of our business license ordinance and our short-term rental license. That simply hasn't been moved up to the top of the priority list as yet, but we still need to do that. What is easier to address is our enforcement policy. And what we've had is conversations internally about ensuring that we don't put forward to town council a proposed revocation simply for what might be relatively minor violations within a short period of time.
Well, but in this particular case, it was not minor violations. It was just one renter on 3 consecutive days. So the matter of the fact is we haven't done anything in the last 2 months, is basically my conclusion. So then the next topic that we raised, I believe, in the town council meeting on July 2nd was the situation that we, on a recurring basis, see on the leisure trail along Kiowa Island Parkway, which means flooding to a degree, and I'm not talking about Debbie, I'm talking about regular rainstorms that on a continuous basis we see stretches flooded, despite the fact that I believe the Public Works Department has done something with the drainage, etc., but nothing has changed. So what will be done in this particular case? The second, probably more crucial topic here is the Mingo Curve. We have now seen at least twice, once certainly on December 17th, but I think there was a second time more recently where at least a portion of the Mingo Curve was flooded. This is the only way in and out of this island. So what is the plan to do something about that particular case? We've talked a lot, you and I, Brad, about the Public Works Committee. I haven't seen anything happening in that respect to have a Public Works Committee again to help us determine what needs to be done, what are the options, what are the priorities, et cetera. Where do we stand with that?
As to the first item, there, as you are aware, what the Public Works Department undertook was a clearing of the drains along the
I mentioned that.
the Kiowa Island Parkway bike path, and that seemed to substantially mitigate the flooding-related issues. There is still, I believe, I'm not sure if Brian is here.
Nope.
What's your question in regards to
The status of the proposals we've solicited to address further changes to the bike paths, both on Beach Walker and KIP.
Yeah, so we had received money from the Charleston County CTC Fund in the amount of $284,000. I was out last week on vacation, but when I was working with Brian, I just wanted to see, we had received a quote, but because we received county funds for this, I'd asked him that we do have to probably get 3 bids from the county. So he was going to talk with Alex, this was 2 weeks ago, to see if we can use our existing quote or if we have to push out for RFP. I didn't get a chance to talk with him, I just got back today to see what the county said, but we do have the funding for it, we do have a quote for it, we're just trying to see if we have to re-advertise,
Okay.
get
All
proposals.
right, so at least we can hope that in the foreseeable future, that problem and the risk, the safety risk that is triggered by it will be mitigated.
Yes, that includes for the Parkway and Beach Walker for those, two project areas that we receive funding from.
So on the same, during the same meeting, we also talked about the EMS truck on Kiowa and the activities that council members had done prior to the election. Then you brought yourself into this topic in the discussions with the county. I haven't seen anything since. I asked you 2 months ago, and your answer to my question was not really of substance. So I was wondering, where do we stand right now in discussions with the county to facilitate a full-time, 24/7, fully staffed, fully educated EMS truck on the island?
Mr. Mayor, these seem like questions that are beyond just the approval of the minutes of the meeting. Is this the right time to talk about these things?
That's why I
or
was
should we
asking.
Do those at a different
I
time?
can also do this into my updates, but it's the same thing.
It's fine.
Okay.
It's fine. We are still in the process of trying to schedule. One of the directions is to schedule a follow-up meeting with the county EMS staff. That has not taken place yet. That's still the objective. Now, whether that necessarily leads to 24/7 coverage on the eastern end of the island remains to be seen. But yes, we need to have conversations about what the plans are of the county with respect to EMS services and what their political considerations are, what their cost considerations are, and how we might be constructive players in that process. So there's certainly the intention to have those further conversations.
But those questions, Brad, have already been answered in the first meeting where you then joined unannounced, because they clearly told us that this station, Fire Station 6, is not high on their priority. They clearly said that. There are other areas of Watmalaw and West Ashley that they need to attack first. They clearly said that this is not their priority. So the question is, what are we doing to change that priority?
That is not my recollection of what Mr. Abrams said at the time, but we can go back and check the record.
It was
My
actually Mr.
recollection
Wilson.
of what he said at the time pretty clearly was, as part of their 5-year plan, that fully staffing that facility was part of that longer-term plan.
Oh, I agree
that
on
they
this
do-
one. But
that
what they said is it was at the very end of those 5 years.
I have,
So, and
I
I'm
don't
not
have
sure
any
that-
recollection that he said
and
that. He
I'm-
said that they do have competing priorities and considerations and that they haven't evolved all of those competing
So I would
priorities and
hope that this becomes a little bit more of your priority and the priority of the county, because I think that is what we owe to improve the safety of our community. I mean, I'm living very close by to the number 6. When I drive by in the evenings, there's nothing. So you better don't get sick and need to call 911 after 6 o'clock. But there are also, especially during weekdays, multiple times where there is no truck visible. Now, they might be en route somewhere, but I do also see because they drive by my house when they come and go. So I think we can say that those 60%-ish kind of numbers of being in that facility with freelancers and overtime workers is just not giving us the full coverage of services
What
that we
they-
actually pay for
What they've
to the
represented,
county.
we can belabor this if you want to. What was represented to us is that we, with our current tax dollars, get coverage for about 68% of the time through that particular facility. In addition, there's 24/7 coverage, literally a quarter mile up the road, that also serves all of Kiowa Island and also serves Seabrook. In addition, what was represented to us is when the MUSC facility is built, we can have a conversation about that will reduce the cycle time that emergency services vehicles are out of commission by having to drive in to Charleston. So all of this is part of the ongoing process of better understanding what our levels of coverage are, what the cost and benefit analysis is with regard to getting additional services. We already get, and this was made very clear by Deputy Chief Watson, that we already get much better EMS coverage on Kiowa Island by having a facility on the island that's staffed more than 2/3 of the time than other areas of Charleston County do. So they've got to deal with that from a political dynamic standpoint, to the extent that they appear to be providing greater range of services to Kiowa Island than they do to some of their other constituents. That's a fact of life. We've got to have a conversation about how to solve for it.
All right. I know all of this, Brad. I'm only saying I would hope that future council put that topic far higher up in the agenda, as it seems to be the case at the moment. Proportionally, this community is the highest taxpayer to the county of Charleston. I think we deserve a much better service, and I think that should be one of the top priorities of this council to accomplish, despite the political, things that might get into the way of some other objectives. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you.
And if I may,
Yes,
the
ma'am.
$284,000 that's already been received with respect to Mingo Point, what will those monies accomplish? What specifically what infrastructure are they going to improve?
That money is to help with, as you recall, the concern with the bike paths, raising of the bike paths at certain areas to help prevent from flooding. And on Beach Walker, the same thing, and I think there were some other improvements. I don't have
But
the
it's
total
only-
proposal.
It's only bike path, it's no roadway.
That's correct.
Thank you.
The next agenda item is an executive session to receive legal advice under 34-4-70-A2. And just for the benefit of the community members, this is with regard only to the Timbers, the lawsuit that the owners of the Timbers filed against the town subsequent to a rezoning of that parcel. And there are, we believe that it's a readily resolvable issue, but we're going to receive advice from counsel on that matter and that matter alone, and it should be a relatively brief executive session. So please, we appreciate your patience. Thank you. I'd like to have a motion to move into executive session.
So moved?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I guess we'll wait here for a moment for Madeline to rejoin us. Madeline, you hear and see us?
I cannot. I hear you. Hold on.
Madeline, we can see you. You cannot see us?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okey doke.
And you can see us?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. In the executive session, no votes were taken, no decisions were made. We received advice of council only, and we will circle back with the community further on this matter at a later date. The next agenda item is citizen comments. We actually had a visitor sign-in sheet, so we'll first take those who signed up in order. Mr. Lance Spencer.
Mine's not an agenda item, so I'll speak at the end.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. McIlvain? No, Ms. McIlvain was first.
But I didn't check it.
Oh, okay. You wrote your name but didn't check. Got it. So you surprised me with that one. I just assumed. Mr. McIlvain?
Brad McElvain, 146 Blue Heron Pond Road. I've often come up here and been critical of certain things. I want to come up here and congratulate you on one thing today. If we look at the resolution to adopt a gift policy, I think this is a great policy. It's frankly been somewhat overdue, but I think it's a great policy. I also think we have a couple KICA board members here. I think it's something that the KICA board should look at as well, because I think it is a good model that they should use going forward. So I commend you for this, and I hope it passes.
Thank you. Mr. DeStefano? Not an agenda item. Are there any other citizen comments on agenda items? If not, we will move to updates from council members. I have several, perhaps not surprisingly, but it's been a long while since we've gotten together. The first is to note that, and I believe an announcement went out from the town today, that we have a couple of upcoming meetings. In fact, I want to mention three. One is another quarterly town hall meeting scheduled for October 19th. It will be like the last town hall meeting, provide an opportunity for residents to come and discuss whatever issues are on their mind. I've, as part of that, and he won't be there the entire time, but I've invited Charleston City Council member Jim McBride to join us for a portion of that meeting. As you may be aware, or you may not be aware, Council member McBride's jurisdiction encompasses a good chunk of Johns Island, including almost all of Maybank. So there are several significant proposed projects which are within his jurisdiction, including the Trident Hospital complex, as well as a more recently proposed new hotel complex along Maybank Island in the Jubilee project. That is actually being developed by a local developer, New Leaf, which is also the developer of Hayes Park. And he said he might be able to bring that developer as well to answer any questions. He can also provide an update on roads-related projects within his jurisdiction, as well as a brief overview of the plan that was announced, the Charleston City Water Plan, which is fairly comprehensive in scope, that was announced last week. So again, that's on September 19th. Another meeting that was noticed, I believe today, was the community drop-in meeting tomorrow afternoon here in council chambers with regard to the consultant study pertaining to the provision of public security and law enforcement services on and around Kiowa Island. So that review process has been underway. There were actually some meetings earlier today. This is an opportunity for the community to provide input on this process. One thing I want to make clear as to what this is and what it isn't. This is kind of the consultant terminology, a needs assessment and gap analysis exercise. That's this phase of the project. It's not going to be recommending standing up a police force. It's not going to be recommending necessarily KICA, for example, hire SLED-certified law enforcement personnel who have arrest authority, to be handled behind the gate by KICA security or anything else. It's to better understand what are the full range of public security and safety resources currently available on and around Kiowa Island. How do they coordinate and communicate? What are response times? What are the nature of incidences, et cetera? So it's really a data gathering and information analysis exercise. But we certainly want to receive community input about their concerns or issues with regard to any of these matters. So that meeting is tomorrow afternoon, I believe at 1 o'clock, 1 to 2:30. The third meeting I want to bring to your attention is scheduled for the end of this month. John, I believe it's September 30th. It is and it addresses in part the issue raised by Councilmember Heidingsfelder previously, a joint Town Council and Planning Commission workshop on our own water management issues, stormwater management issues. There are a number of component parts to that. Part of this will be a process of updating the resiliency work that was done here on Kiowa Island about 5 years ago now, 5 or 6 years ago, and what new information do we have available about the incidence of tides, the incidence of storms and an intensity of storms, sea level rise. This will be a lot of information gathering as well. We'll get reports from various experts. I think who's been invited is Weston and Sampson. KICA will participate in this. The resort will participate in this, and other stakeholders as well. So we want to have as much expert input as we can. But this is an opportunity again for the community to participate in this workshop. It's a public workshop, and I know many community members have expressed particular concern, for example, about the increased incidence of flooding coming from the marsh. So what are the strategies about enhancing resiliency in the marsh and building on the work that Councilmember Heidingsfelder and Councilmember Kay have been doing for a long period of time. The next agenda item is to encourage the community to participate in the community survey that the town sent out about a month ago now. We've gotten a pretty good response, about 750 or so responses thus far, which is very encouraging. Would love to get more. We have extended the deadline post-Labor Day. As originally, we wanted responses by the end of August, but we said wait till people get back after the holiday so they can focus on this again. Just a couple of preliminary highlights, and we'll provide a lot more information regarding the survey at the October meeting. But about 50% of the respondents were full-time residents, 45% were part-time residents. What respondents felt the town's most important areas of focus should be in order: First was management of planning and development of projects. Second was, apropos of the September 30 meeting, flooding, beach management, and traffic congestion. All got better than 50% response rates. What the town currently does well, they could select multiple items: emergency preparedness, communication, beach patrol, and environmental and wildlife support. What the town could improve on: planning and development projects, permitting processes, and code enforcement of town ordinances. And the overall level of satisfaction, 70% of respondents were either satisfied or very satisfied with the town's overall services. But this is an exercise in order to establish a benchmark, a baseline for how we're doing and what we can do better. And we're going to do this on an annual basis, much like Kika does, so we can continue to monitor where we need to improve. Now, that raises the next agenda item on areas where we may need to improve. There were a number of issues. We received them at the town council. Certainly they were noticed on IKEA about trash pickup issues around the Labor Day holiday. It was a twofold set of concerns. One, there were apparent increased incidents in the number of missed trash pickups. The second was the fact that people had been trying to reach out to the town and provide information and hope to get the matter addressed and weren't getting responses. Mea culpa on our part. As it turned out last week, the principal person responsible for responding to these was on vacation. The backup person, the person who usually handles that in their absence, was also on vacation. And in addition, the people that were then the third backup weren't really aware that they're kind of the third point of backup, and that's the Public Works Department, and those calls were coming into their landlines in their offices, and they're generally out in the field addressing issues. So we discussed this at yesterday's senior staff meeting, and we've got to improve our internal protocols, make sure we are appropriately staffed for vacations and things like that. So everybody we think we've reached out to everybody who contacted the town about a trash concern, and we've also reached out to the service provider, Trident, and the CEO of that, and they promised to address any issues. If you have continuing concerns, please let us know, and we will commit to try to get back to you as soon as possible. Let you know about a new project we're undertaking, and we also want some community input in this regard. It's with regard to cell phone coverage on the island, and it's obviously an issue of general convenience, but it also becomes an issue of public safety when you have a lot of people on the island and you may have difficulty in getting emergency calls through. The town staff is starting the process of reaching out to all the cell tower owners. There are actually just 2 or 3 owners, but there are 7 different cell towers on the island. And we are also reaching out to the cell service providers, Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile. And the objective is to figure out where there are opportunities to potentially put in new cell towers, whether there need to be enhancements to the current cell towers, or whether there need to be enhancements or upgrades by the service providers themselves to the technology they have co-located at these cell towers. So it would be helpful to receive input as part of this review process from the community. If people have, if you're one of the cell users, T-Mobile, AT&T, and Verizon, and you know of dead spots where you're getting no or 1 bars, it would be helpful to have that information so we can factor that into discussions with the cell tower owners and the service providers. 2 last matters. One I'll spend a little bit more time on. At the last time that the council met, which was just prior to the arrival of Debbie, we talked about the upcoming mediation process with the property owner with regard to the Cape, Ocean Pines, Upper Beachwalker West End, and Cape Point Road extension. and that we were commencing that process. It was supposed to commence that week, but was postponed as a result of DEPI, but then occurred subsequently, and I'll press pause on that aspect right now. There were a number of comments that were raised at the time about whether it would be appropriate for me to recuse myself from the mediation process, given the fact that I was a homeowner in Riverview, one of 250 homeowners that are part of, who had sent comment letters to the town about development projects on Long Beach Walker, and they were subject of a lawsuit filed by Kiowa Partners against those three homeowners associations. I take any issues related to conflicts of interest, actual or potential, extraordinarily seriously. Both prior to that time and subsequent to that, I spent a fair amount of time kind of discussing the issues with our town attorney, with our outside counsel, and perhaps most importantly with the general counsel of the State Ethics Commission. A couple things in that regard. And I got an opinion in this regard that there was no prohibition, no prohibited conflict under the State Ethics Act that would require recusal on my part. I would note that it might have been different if the HOAs were suing the town or the town were suing the HOAs. That wasn't the case. There was actually no interaction in regard to the lawsuit between the town and the HOAs. What we discussed was actually a more direct conflict by virtue of the fact that I am a club member, and it was actually the club that had the most distinct interest with regard to opening the club facility, but was assured that simply by virtue of being a club member, that didn't get rise to a prohibited conflict. That would also raise a slippery slope of issues, since the three council members, I believe, are club members, and if we all had to recuse ourselves as a result of that level of conflict, then we wouldn't even have a quorum. Arguably, the same thing would potentially pertain to being a governor's club member, and any application was forthcoming from the resort. So that would also present a slippery slope. And at the end of the day, my responsibility as a mayor is to represent the interest of the entire community, which I think I'm fully capable of doing and committed to doing. For various reasons, there was reason not to recuse myself. And again, I think it would establish an unfortunate precedent. Having said all of that, I made the decision to recuse myself from participation in the mediation process. And it was actually an easy decision in some respects, because at the end of the day, I wanted to make sure that there wasn't any taint whatsoever on anybody's part associated with my participation in the mediation process. Most importantly, the issues, the law, and the facts would all pertain regardless of whether I participated or not, and I had the utmost faith and confidence in Councilmember Farrell and Councilmember Berner, who are the council members participating in the mediation process, along with our town attorney, Mac McQuillan, and outside counsel, Ross Appel, to handle the mediation process. That is ongoing. I really can't say anything more about that. I will provide that opportunity to Councilmember Farrell, but you should be aware that he's going to be generally constrained in what he can talk about. So the last and most important matter is I actually want to acknowledge and thank Councilmember Heidingsfelder for his contributions to the Kiowa Island community during his service on the council. We agreed and worked together on a number of issues. There's some where we have disagreed, but that's kind of the nature of the political process. But at every turn, Council Member Heidingsfelder has gone kind of above and beyond in committing time and energy to issues that matter to the Kiowa Island community. He's always been willing to onboard more committee assignments and responsibilities than just about anybody else. And I think perhaps most importantly, he's been really the catalyst, the driver of some of the important initiatives we're undertaking to protect the well-being of the Kiowa Island community, and particularly the natural habitat for the future. And that's particularly manifested in, along with Councilmember Kay, in the development of the marsh management plan, but also the Kiowa Goes Green initiative, and the two EV charging stations that we have here at the municipal center are largely the result of the efforts that he's put in and the leadership he's demonstrated on those projects. And again, I want to thank him for his time and service to the community. And that is it with regard to my update. And Councilmember Heidingsfelder, you are next.
Do you ask
Certainly.
Luke first?
Certainly.
Sorry.
Councilmember Farrell.
So as the mayor mentioned, probably the biggest thing that I want to talk about is the mediation. And I can't say a whole lot about it. We had our first day, I think it was August 21st, Wednesday. We met from 9 until 6. And coming out of that, we all agreed not to talk about what we'd agreed to, where we were, kind of what the tone of the meetings were, other than to say that it was a very constructive meeting. Again, Councilman Berner and I went with the legal counsel for the town, and Mr. Taylor went as well. From here, the process is we're going to meet, we're trying to schedule it right now, but it looks like we're going to meet next Wednesday with parties to coalesce around the things we did agree to. We put it in writing. Now we want to see it on kind of maps, if you will. And if we've coalesced around that, then the next step will be the third week in September, or fourth week in September. We will meet again as a group, both sides, with the mediator, and we'll proceed to expand the scope of what we talked about beyond where we were last time. Both sides are trying to make this as comprehensive and as expansive as we can, so we can really settle a lot of issues all at one time and not have to relitigate or redebate these issues, one by one as we go forward. We'll see how that works out, but I think that's the goal of both sides. When we're done, we will certainly come back and report about where we are. We're very sensitive about the outstanding legal issues for the town and the outstanding legal issues for the partners. That will be part of the settlement, we think. And I hope I'm not going out of bounds by even saying that. But the stuff that you've seen in the paper over the past week or so, I personally would characterize as repeating old news. There was nothing new in those things. We're talking about all of the issues that I think anybody in this room would bring up. And we have, I think, an agreement to solve all of those problems. So I'm very encouraged. There's a lot of work left to do. The process is pretty rigorous for both sides. But I think there's good faith. Again, my personal opinion, there's good faith on the part of both parties to solve these issues, put them behind us, and move forward as a community and as a developer, and continue to make this a great place. So more to come and more details to come. I apologize for not being able to share anything of substance today, but that's an agreement both we have and that the partners had, that we won't say anything that might possibly taint the negotiations, other than to say that everybody's being very constructive and moving forward in good faith. So I'll stop there, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Kay?
Okay. First and foremost, I want to thank Michael for his extraordinary service to this community. On a personal note, I'm disappointed at his resignation because I count on Michael's extraordinary ability to quickly absorb and analyze complex issues and to bring a unique perspective to the table. It's really hard to appreciate just how much of himself Michael has given to the community and how hard he's worked really on behalf of the entire Kiowa community. I don't know that I would have run for council if it hadn't been for Michael's input and his support. So Michael, I'll miss sharing this dais with you first on the Planning Commission and then on the council. I want to thank you for all that you've done, and I know that you will continue to give your all to the community, just in different ways. So best of luck, but I really will miss you. As far as updates on the initiatives that I'm most involved with, first, the ARB. As you all know, the ARB work group is comprised of folks from Toki and from Kika. We're well on our way to reaching an important milepost, the completion of an implementation plan that details how we will go ahead with the transition of the ARB from the partners to Kika. We're pretty much completed sections on mission and scope, on architectural guidelines and controls, on proposed structures, on key roles and responsibilities, on key processes involved with all of that, and then our transition strategy and timeline. We have a meeting set up for tomorrow. We're going to tackle several of the nuts and bolts issues, including staffing of various levels of the ARB structure, the proposed ARB structure. We're still working on legal issues and on financial issues, but we plan to have a document that's pretty much ready to take to the partners in the next month or so. Without leaving this topic, special thanks out to Amanda Mole and to Tommy Manuel. They have given us some really complete exposure to the current ARB practices and procedures. And I also want to thank the two newest members of the work group who are serving on behalf of the town, and that is Diana Mezzanote and Sandy Devine. They're both relatively new to this process, but they jumped right in, and they have already made significant contributions to this project. Moving on to environment, we've been really busy on this front. First off, I'm incredibly gratified by the outpouring of community interest in Kiowa's environment. I can't tell you how many people volunteered for a variety of our environmental committees and subcommittees, and so I'm really pleased to welcome them all. Linda Leffner and Cindy Perry, who have joined the Environmental Committee. Ann McGowan and Pam Cohen have joined the Pet Restraint / Shorebird Protection Subcommittee. Greg Martin and Fran Williams are on the Kiowa Bridge Subcommittee. Bob Martineau has joined the Marsh Management Subcommittee. So we've got some really important issues that are being tackled by each of these committees and subcommittees, and I'll report on them all as we make progress over the coming months. But first, a couple of things. Bridge Subcommittee. We've got some signage now that's been designed that indicates, so as you are at the bridge and you go down the walkway to access the river, we've got signage now that has been designed that indicates that this is a critical habitat, and importantly, it links to the Marsh Management Comprehensive Plan. So it's instructive, it's informative, and we hope that it will act as a deterrent to anybody who is going to be trampling on some very sensitive ground there. We're going to monitor compliance and non-compliance with a camera that's been installed at the bridge, and we will add enforcement if signage alone is inadequate. But for the time being, we're going to go with the signage and hope that that does the trick. Then, on the marsh management, we've got multiple communications efforts that have been recently produced and underway. You've seen them. You might have seen the one that I did with Collie Farrell and with Lee Bundrich. I encourage folks to watch that, and I want to give thanks to the Conservancy because they were responsible for all of the production of that and have generously shared that with the town as part of our combined outreach efforts. But this is a really informative podcast, and I understand that it's generated several watches already. Moving on to pet restraint. This is of huge interest in the community, both from the shorebird stewards and from the beach/dog community. It's important to note that we have strong representation from both of these groups on our subcommittee, And we're currently working on a comprehensive draft ordinance that should be ready to go to the Environmental Committee within the next month. I just saw the draft, the most recent draft of that yesterday or the day before. It's nice, it's tight, and it's a real significant improvement over what we've had before. Jim Jordan and Ann McGowan have been really driving this process. I want to thank them. Very importantly for the community, we know that this is an issue that is passionate on both sides, and we are going to be working toward a compromise. But we are also going to ensure that we give the community every possible opportunity to be involved in the discussion, to present to the subcommittee any issues, any objectives, anything that they think we need to hear to make the best informed decision possible. We're planning at this point to schedule a special session for the community only on this issue. And so we'll give you adequate time then to announce that and make plans to attend. There will also then be the opportunity to meet when the Environmental Committee meets on this draft ordinance, and then there will be the two readings of the whatever ordinance goes forward to council, and there's always public sessions there. So lots and lots of opportunities for the community to be involved in this discussion, because again, I know how passionate people are about it. I also wanted to follow up on an issue that was raised at the last meeting, which was the second generation anticoagulants that threaten the bobcats. There's always time to sign that bobcat pledge. It's on the town's website. There's also a really good video that Jim Jordan has produced on bobcats. So I'll continue to work with Jim and his team to keep this issue alive. Finally, turtle season has ended. It ended 2 weeks early because of the heat. And Lynn Sager has reported that there were 356 nests, which was our fourth largest year. Only 2 nests were degraded due to coyotes. And as always, many, many thanks to the folks who are on the Turtle Patrol. They do a terrific job. Separate topic, Brad mentioned the September 30th meeting that John Taylor is putting together on stormwater management. I would encourage anybody who is interested in that topic to attend. It's going to be a free flow, a really good presentation of some of the historic work that's been done on this front. And it's an opportunity for the community to get educated on what's been done and what we need to do going forward. And that's it on environment. I have one last topic that I'd like to bring up, and this is relating to our terms of office for council. I talked to several folks in the community about the prospect of running for the vacant seat the seat that Michael will be vacating. And I heard fairly consistently that 4 years was an awfully long term of office, and it was acting as a significant deterrent to many people who would have otherwise considered running. And I think that I would like to propose that we revisit terms of office. I don't have any suggestions at this point for what would be an optimal term of office, but I think just in terms of wanting to encourage community involvement and participation in town council, I think it's something that we need to take a look at. So Brad, perhaps you'd like to convene some kind of a task force to do that, depending on what other council members think. If I'm alone in this, not a big deal, I can drop it. But if there are other people who are supportive, then I'd like to take a look at it. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Madeline, I've gotten the same kind of feedback with regard to the terms of office, the 4 years, and I think there's been a increased recognition that there's a lot of time and effort that's required to perform these roles and responsibilities thoroughly. And that I've gotten the same sense that, boy, I really would love to contribute, really love to invest, but committing to 4 years is a high bar. So I would certainly be supportive of, I don't know if there are any state law issues. I mean, our ordinance simply says 4 years. It would be an easy change to make to the ordinance if we wanted to do so, but maybe we should set up a governance task force to explore kind of the pros and cons. You know, there are arguments for shorter and longer. You know, obviously at the federal level, members of Congress terms are up every 2 years. Senators up for 6 years. So, but I think that is something, given the input I know you've received, and I've heard from others, that is worth taking a look at. I wanted to update on one other item that I'd forgotten to mention regarding the Bobcats, and you know, kudos to all for stepping up the Bobcat Guardian program. The voluntary efforts are incredibly important, but if we can, we would like to be able to do more than rely on voluntary efforts. So the town has renewed its request to the relevant state department, which is actually Clemson, to be able to, here on Kiowa Island, impose a moratorium on the use of SGAs. That has been received and acknowledged, and by Clemson. Kudos to Jim Jordan and staff providing a lot of updated information and analysis to Clemson. Representative Wetmore, Spencer Wetmore, has indicated she will be reaching out to Clemson to support that effort. We may be able to get others as well. So stay tuned. Now, whether they're actually going to, you know, take a different approach this time than they did last time, we'll see. But it's good to be able to present updated evidence to show voluntary programs help. They may not be sufficient to protect our beloved Bobcats. And before turning to Councilmember Heidingsfelder, Councilmember Farrell, did you have one other issue?
Yes, I was very remiss. I too want to express my sincere appreciation for the work that Dr. Eidensfelder has done over the past years, not only at Town Council, but the Planning Commission before that. People have said this before, but the amount of depth, the amount of work that he contributes to going into issues, the number of issues that he gets involved in, he's been really heroic on Town Council and Planning Commission before then, and the contributions he's made, the dedication he's made, and the work he's done. So I too will miss him greatly. I hope he stays involved in other ways, but I would like to say thank you very much, sir, for the work you've contributed.
Councilmember Heidingsfelder.
Yes. First of all, Brad, I'm really thankful that the town decided to approach Clemson. I think I made that strong argument in the June or July town council meeting. At that time, it was not received very well, but I'm always grateful if opinions are changing, and I think it's worth a try because we should not forget how important the Bobcats are for all of us, and at the end, even for our property values. I think we should not forget that. Stephanie, if you do your update, could you please talk a little bit about MUSC? I received a lot of questions about the status is. If I remember the last time that Dr. Cowley, I believe is the name, right, was at the meeting, he was stating that he would expect to be shovel ready in July, and then it was August, and he didn't come to the July meeting. August was canceled. So I think there's quite a bit of important interest from the community to know more what's going on because they haven't seen any impact. I personally think that we've done as a town everything we need to. I believe there was still some holdup with Seabrook, but if you could elaborate on that, I think would be great. And I would also recommend that we might want to invite him again for one of the next meetings to give the community a better update.
And hopefully he would actually appear.
Okay, I mean, he's a busy man, I understand that, but I think, you know, if you make a certain commitment, well, it was not really a commitment, but a certain statement, and then things change, we should probably better know about it. I think that Luke referred to another incident, you know, on Kiowa that I want to elaborate a little bit more, also because I was personally named, both by the gentleman who wrote the opinion article on Post Courier, as well as the ongoing delight for Mr. Hazel to call out my name. Although it's really, I mean, my wife and I had a real big laugh when he called me the cheerleader of the partners. Mark, I don't know if you remember that. Still enjoy that. Friends are actually calling me that too, in joke, hopefully. But I think at least the Kiowa community received yesterday another of those ominous emails from Mrs. Slater and Mr. Hazel, who seem to take pleasure in continuing their kind of self-serving smear campaign against the town and at least some elected officials. And they commented on this article that was talking in the Post and Courier about the parking issues at the Cape and this anti-development forces on Kiowa. As a side note, I find it interesting that, especially as it relates to those anti-development forces on Kiowa, those people are often those that are actually triggering this. But what I really wanted to comment is, that Mr. Hazel always seemed to comfortably overlook the fact that actually facts exist at the Cape. Fortunately, unfortunately, we have not a clean slate of paper that, we can start an entire process in a proper fashion, whatever he thinks is a proper fashion. We have 7 large buildings completed. They do exist. We have 78 community members, couples, families, owning these apartments rightfully. And in an, I guess, undisputable fashion, these families are part of our community, which often people like Hazel and Slater seems to forget when they are slashing on the activities around the Cape, etc. I'm sure that Mr. Hazel does not suggest in his commentaries to tear down some of these buildings to accommodate for the parking on the property, as our ordinances would have required when this whole process started. But I think what we really need to look at is to find a compromise, and I'm happy that Luke reported from the mediation that there seems to be some progress. Now, I again need to apologize to Mr. Hazel because I used the word compromise, which he seems to hate, and he has blamed me for that multiple times, and I'm sure he will do again. But in this matter, I think we all need to understand that we can only aim for a compromise now where we are. And I think there are good solutions for these compromises that will hopefully at least, be accepted by the majority of the community as being reasonable. And I really hope and want to encourage both Luke and Russ to do their very best in the mediations to find a compromise. Oops, now I used the word again. But find a good solution for the community to resolve these issues. And I also hope that, this goes beyond just the parking issue on the Cape, because I think along the famous Beachwalker Drive, we have a lot of those stucking issues that needs to be resolved. Now, as you all know, this is my last town council meeting. I've informed the mayor and the town administrator some while ago that I will resign. We timed it in a way that I wanted to make sure that the community doesn't have to go to the elections again. So we timed it in a way that the election for my vacated seat will now be in combination with the general election on November 5th. I hope that suits us, and I hope that suits the community, and I hope this will bring a lot of people to vote for the next council member. Now, since this public announcement went out with my resignation, I have received from many community members notes and letters and calls and emails and text and some of these other things that I don't really use on social media. And I really wanted to thank all of them. I wanted to thank my colleagues for the kind words that they have brought forward and the encouragement that they expressed. And I feel really honored to be recognized at that. Of course, I understand that many of you will not understand my decision, and they were certainly surprised. But the past few months, I really have to say that the fun of being able to help this community and facilitate change just went away for me. And There are a lot of reasons that I don't really want to elaborate because I don't want to, throw gasoline into the fire. But my feeling of unhappiness has really triggered that decision. And if I have learned one very important life rule from my dad, is that when you get up in the morning and you're not super excited about your day's schedule, and you almost don't even like to open your inbox because you don't know what might have, popped in there overnight, I think it's time to change. Now, the last thing with the email box I added because my dad never had an email account, but it's the same feeling. And I had that twice in my life, in my career, and I made a change, which was very fortunate. I hope that this change will be equally fortunate for me in the community, because I'm certainly not intending to just disappear and play 200 days of golf. It's not me, but I will certainly continue to serve. There's one area that is really close to my heart, which is how we unfortunately have managed to make progress in one area over the many recent months, is to alienate many of our counterparts, with whom we need to have a good relationship. We cannot progress otherwise, including along Beachwalker Drive. Our relationship with, I believe, the master developer is as bad as it can be. We seem to be only really talking through lawyers and over or about lawsuits that we filed at each other. It has cost me really a lot of pressure, I would almost say, in the July executive session to convince my colleagues to reach out to South Street, which to me was always the key reason why we filed, not to really go to court, but to use it as a platform to talk and to find, I'm not saying compromise, but find a way out of this mess as it relates to the parking, as it relates to the Beachwalker Drive parcels, as it relates even to Captain Sam Spitz. So I really hope that we find a way to normalize our relationships over the coming months, because I think that's the only way we as a community can be happy and go back to our lives. Anyway, all of this said, I'm honored that I had a chance to serve. It was always my intention with retirement to give back to the community, which is a big word, but it is really something that this country taught me, that people want to do that. So I am very thankful, and very thankful for all the support and the opportunity to serve. Last thing, please vote on November 5th. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Heidingsfelder. Your turn for your update. Thank you.
Dorota, if you can make your way up, and I'll just give my quick updates. As the mayor said, in regards to the EV station and the Kiawah Go Green Initiative, I just wanted to give just a quick update on that. In June, we had, I'm just going to do by hours, we had 71 hours worth of use. In July, of course, that's when it picked up, because we had a full month. We had just over 312 hours of use. In August, right now, it's estimated, we're waiting on the final numbers, but right now it looks like we have about 427 hours of use. So the
I'm sorry, how
number,
many?
427 hours. So the number is increasing, the word is getting out. We'll have more information for you all next month in regards to our work with Dorota, because we'll try to look at the delta between kind of like our costs with Berkeley Electric, stations going in, and while we had the stations for the 3 months that we had for free service, because this, of course, as you guys had discussed, you'll have to decide in terms of what you want to do moving forward with regards to the cost of the public or residents, or leave it at no cost or reduced cost. But we'll provide as much information as possible to you all so that you can make an informed decision next month. I have, I think, all of the updates other than MUSC. So the primary delay was they were working with Town of Seabrook Planning Commission and Town Council on the encroachment permit. The encroachment permit that was granted to Seafields. MUSC, Seafields had to essentially go in and they had to negotiate to modify the encroachment permit to add MUSC on that. They finally have come to terms. It's my understanding right now, I had got the email, text message about 2 weeks or so ago when it was finally approved at the Planning Commission. I believe council's approved it right now. It's just in the attorney's hands. They're trying to work out the language, but as soon as that's done, we can sign off on the site plan. That's all we're waiting for from the town's perspective is to get that encroachment permit signed and over to us. Once that's done, they are free to go. The permitting and for building construction, that's all done through the state. So once they get that, then we'll give them the site plan and they can get started. So hopefully they'll be able to get that within the next 30 days.
Just one follow-up regarding the EV stations, the economics around that. Staff discussed that at yesterday's senior staff meeting. The effect of not taking action until the next council meeting will mean at least another week or week and a half of essentially free service for anybody that wants to charge their vehicles. We were also informed by the fact, I don't know if you read the Island Connection, of what Seabrook has done with regard to how it's charging for its EV stations, and it's basically to recoup their cost. What I've asked the staff to do, and that's what Stephanie was alluding to, is essentially what Blink charges us, and then if we want to recoup, what that would look like in terms of, actual cost of the electricity plus some percentage to cover the amount that we pay to Blink, and whether or not we want to be able to recover maintenance cost or not, that's a separate discussion, but that will be part of the staff recommendations for next month.
Okay,
Part of the whole
thank
idea.
you. So
Right, which was part of the whole idea to start with.
I just want to give you a quick overview of the financial information for last fiscal year. Those numbers are not audited. However, I am in the process of the financial audit with the plan to have the final report presented to you in November. And I also do not expect a lot of changes to those numbers because we are already at the point that they pretty much confirm. So that should be the final numbers, the accrued numbers. There is one more item, though. We are waiting from our attorney to update on the legal status. If there is any legal claims that may be payable, then maybe need to be recorded, but that will be just the balance sheet transaction. So as of June 30th, our combined fund balance was about $41 million. Of this amount, about 58% or 24 million is unassigned as general fund balance that could be spent up to the town council discretion. About 7.6 million is restricted for the tourism-related funding, and that's restricted by the law, either state law or local laws. And we have about 9.4 million for capital or emergency reserves. This is assigned by the town's resolution. This has been pretty much the best year the town has with as far as the revenue. And the general fund finished the year very strong with about 4 million in surplus. Our revenues, consolidated revenues of about 18.6 million are 1.7 million higher than last year and exceeded the budget for about 3 million. There's few big contributors to those positive variances, and the building permits. Even though they decreased slowly from last year, and we have seen a decreasing number of permits issued, about 400, but the cost of construction is higher comparing to prior years, and that pretty much cushions that variance. We also received about $1 million in a permit for the lower and upper Beachwalker projects, and this is just a one-time permit. The business license revenue increased tremendously, about $745,000 comparing to last year, and it's over $1 million over the budget. And there is two factors to this positive variance. We collected about 50% more from the municipal association through the insurance program, and also there was a lot of additional efforts to get businesses in compliance that kind of initiated by Dr. Heidesfielder. We collected more 200 in revenues and got 250 businesses in compliance, and it's still ongoing project. The taxes that are collected through our accommodations, like local sales option and accommodation taxes, they show a little decrease comparing to last year. However, they within the budget or exceeded the budget. There are some inconsistency between those taxes that I will need to investigate. But that's after the audit. The interest income shows like a huge increase. It's about $832,000 higher than it was last year, and exceeded the budget as well with about 500 basis point on average in a yield. Miscellaneous revenue has a couple of those one-time revenue sources. We received the payment from Charleston County Sheriff's Office reimbursement for the equipment. We received one-time payment from the former treasurer as a part of his restitution. And also we got a, something else in there, $25,000 for from Berkeley Electric as a part of the contribution for the electrical stations. As far as the expenditures, they total of $12.2 million. They are a little higher than last year, about $1.5 million, and exceeded the budget by 3%. Just for the purpose of this report, we had this $5 million placeholder that I excluded for those analysis because it's skewing the numbers pretty much. The employee cost increased by $500,000 comparing to last year due to 4 new positions last year and some salary increases. Public safety cost increased about $31,000 as the new contract that was signed in February had a increase in hourly rate to $55 per hour. Waste management increased to $190,000, and it's due to a new contract with a new contractor that was signed in May, a little earlier than expected originally. Professional services increased by $168,000 comparing to last year. It's due to a large number of legal engagements. Tourism and recreation increased by $100,000 from last year, and it's due to the funding for the state accommodation tax applicants. That money needs to be spent within 2 years. And the capital expenditures, it's the infrastructure. It's $147,000 higher than it was last year, but it's a, so the $5 million placeholder was related to all the projects that are gonna be around the Beach Walker and Kiowa Parkway intersection. It wasn't specified. We were thinking of improvements, doing some improvements to this project. So this is actually a part of the improvements. It's a soft cost and the construction cost for the intersection improvement that was just finished. There were there were 2 pretty much positive variances that offset those negative, and it's a consultant cost. It's due to the 2 projects that have not taken place and were deferred to this year. It's the feasibility study and the zoning code review. And the cost, the actual cost for the electric station is much lower than we were projecting in the budget. So that's pretty much the quick update.
Thank you, Dorota. Any
questions?
council member questions or comments for the finance director?
Thank you.
Just one quick comment, excuse me. The investment returns, as Dorada had mentioned, have been great this year. We're invested in a money market fund that's managed by the state. The return for the past year has been about 510 to 525 per month. We are in a process right now of looking to whether we want to outsource this to change the strategy, take a little bit more risk with potential cash returns coming down. But this has been a great investment for us over the past 12 months and will probably continue to be a very strong investment for us as we look at over the next 6 months anyway. As rates start to come down and Fed funds is eased, we probably want to reevaluate whether we want to stay in cash or take a little bit more interest rate risk, duration risk. But this has been a great source for the town over the past year or so.
Councilmember Kay, any questions or comments?
No.
Just a couple of points I think worth reiterating. One, you noted that there appears to be a disconnect between the trend lines on the ATAX
Yes.
funds that intuitively doesn't make any sense.
Correct.
That the state and local accommodations taxes are going down.
Yes.
The county taxes are going up.
Correct.
So that's an area where there's going to be some renewed focus.
Yes.
And this was largely to the credit of Councilmember Heidingsfelder chairing the audit committee. There's been some additional audit work that we haven't done previously. It's been limited in scope by virtue of the fact that we have limited staff.
Yes.
And it's not a primary function of the current accounting and auditing firm. But what it has revealed is there may be some discrepancies on the revenue generation side as to what constitutes, we should be receiving revenues based on gross receipts, and those aren't necessarily matching up with tax returns or other data sources. So we may need to come back to the council at some point in time to expand that undertaking. The finance director has previously requested an additional headcount, revenue officer, whether we want to go down that path or potentially just simply outsource additional audit capability to handle some of these issues that have arisen as a result of limited testing.
Yeah.
We want to make sure we're obviously generating all the revenues that we're supposed to from business licenses, tax-related revenues as well.
I mean, this was supposed to be a test, a pilot, right? If we would have seen that all the 10 largest contributors are all fine and doing it by the book, I think we could have put it aside. If there are discrepancies, I think there's a great value for us in actually continuing this both down the chain of, the next 10, next 20, and then maybe the next 20, et cetera, companies to make sure that everybody's in compliance and do this on a regular basis, because only if we check for compliance, we can be sure that they are compliant. I think there are other areas where we can use the RODA staff, like, for example, for the business licenses. I think that turned out to be extremely valuable for us, and I think there's still a couple of hundred companies that we still need to track down in that respect that seem to enter the island but don't pay a business license. But these audits, back to this, I think was a little bit of at least my read in the audit committee that we should outsource that and not doing it internally, just for the matter of what it is and the diligence and the official character that has. Also because, these businesses need to disclose a lot of data, and I think it's better if that is clearly separated from the town and kept with an audit firm.
Well, and the staff had previously been primarily focused on a lot of the smaller entities, in part because limited staff resources, and those were easier to run to ground. The bigger the enterprise are, the more that's involved, and that's maybe
And
where
more
we
legal
need
entities
additional
and-
throw weight from outside. So we'll probably be coming back with a staff recommendation at a future point in time how to address that. And it's likely to pay for itself, given any experience, the limited experience we have thus far. Thank you very much, Dorota.
You're welcome.
Appreciate Moving on to old business, the first old business agenda item is to consider approval of ordinance 2024-4. This is second and final reading. This was the change to code section 2-205 regarding the circumstances under which a mayor pro tem would be appointed. We've discussed this at some issue at length previously. There aren't any changes as occurred coming into second reading. So I would entertain a motion for approval of ordinance 2024-04 as proposed.
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Dorota, I believe this next item is yours. It's approval of ordinance 2024-2022. I'm not sure if there are any subsequent questions. Again, this is second and final reading. I don't believe there are any changes that have been made since first reading. Okay. Any questions or comments regarding the proposed ordinance?
No.
I have one.
Okay.
Relates to, but it's small, Exhibit A. Rhoda. So the base rate is increasing, from $50 to $70, and then the rate per thousand or fraction thereof is what you're calling it, also went down. But then for $70 under rate class 8.1, it goes down again. That seems weird.
So that's the contractors. And when we approved it, we did not make any changes to the rate schedule right now. When we originally approved them, we want to keep them as they were at that point. When the other rates have changed, we clean up. So it goes up by the $5 increments. And we just want to keep because the biggest population of the businesses on the island is contractors. We don't want to change that. So hence, it just was
In
the
this
same.
respect, how does that compare to
Others?
municipalities in the
So it's
vicinity?
pretty comparable. Oh, thank you. It's pretty comparable. I do have a schedule that I'll be happy to, I can send after. I do compare all the municipalities, all the coastal municipalities, and we're pretty comparable to
So they
like
also,
Seabrook and Isle of Pea.
so they also give lower rates to contractors, is what you're saying? Mm-hmm. Okay. Good, thank you.
If no further questions or comments, all in favor of approval of ordinance 2024-22?
Aye.
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 Did we have a motion to approve this?
We had no motion, but it's fine.
We did not.
I move that we approve
Let me
it.
formally, thank you all, let me formally move approval of,
I move that we approve this.
second? Did you second?
Second.
Oh, I need a second? Yeah, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. First item of new business, and it's approval of ordinance 2024-2023. This is an issue that's arisen for first reading. It's come back to the council prior, I believe, Stephanie, previously we approved this as a resolution. We subsequently discovered that there were references to this in the text itself, in the code, which
correct.
necessitates actually amending the code to accomplish what we tried to do by resolution previously.
Correct. And if you have any questions, Bruce is here, but nothing changed. We just have to approve it as an ordinance as opposed to a resolution.
I move that we approve this.
Second?
Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Tab 8, this is to approve and authorize the entering into of an East Beach Club operations agreement. A little background and context on this, and this was an issue that council member Heidingsfelder had worked on. There were a couple of aspects of this. And this is the result of what's before the council is a result of discussions and essentially an agreement with the East Beach Club. There are three provisions of our town ordinance one dealing with vehicular traffic on beaches, another with overnight storage of beach equipment, and a third dealing with commercial activities on beaches, where the town, express town permission is required to engage in any of those activities. For a long period of time, the East Beach Club has been engaging in all those activities without any express or explicit permission from the town. The principal objective of this particular agreement is to simply, in a sense, codify current practice in that respect, to provide, to memorialize that the town is providing the requisite permission under the terms and conditions specified here under. As a general matter, the objective of the substance of the agreement is to basically codify current practices at the beach club with a few modest changes. There has been some thought about doing more than that, but this particular proposal really doesn't do much more than that. There will be an opportunity to, when this agreement expires, and the term of this agreement is contemporaneous with other agreements we have with the resort and with Island Beach Services, to revisit some of the substance of these issues. But that is what is before us now, and Councilmember Heidingsville, will certainly invite your input on this, since you were the original catalyst for this proposal.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing really a lot to add. We just want to make sure that, we treat all the three operations on the beach equally, and have a clear agreement in place that governs their operation. That's basically all. Well, that was the intention. So.
Now, Councilmember Farrell, you have actually, I believe, identified an issue that we probably need to correct, and we'll invite council as to how the best way to do that.
Yes, so as I read through this, I noticed that if you look at Exhibit A, which is the map, the western boundary extends over covering what's now private property. And I think that my recommendation would be for the western boundary to be pulled back so that it's an extension of the existing property of the club that goes into the maritime area. It does not include that little parking lot, but just the club itself is where the western boundary should stop. And then the same thing on the eastern boundary. It's currently at where there's boardwalk number 3 from that temporary parking area. It should be pulled back slightly westward so that it's an extension of the property lines. That way, we're not imposing chairs or somebody's commercial ability on private property. And then I wouldn't, at this time, so that's number one, is to get the boundaries corrected so that they're extensions of the current club boundaries. And then number two, as I read this, the extension of this, the term will begin when we approve this on page 1, section 1. The term expires March 2026, but we can terminate this in whole or in part with 30 days written notice. I'm concerned about the number of chairs that are out there. I think we should approve this as a matter of course to get us in place, but I do think it's sometime in the future we should come back and look at, is that number of chairs the appropriate number based on kind of the physical constraints of the larger facility? But I have no objection right now to moving this forward, other than we correct the boundary of the beach that they're able to occupy.
So I don't know, we've had conversations, and I see the club general manager back here, and Tom, I don't know, we hadn't, this issue regarding the boundaries is kind of a newly identified one, but is the council members' identification of the issue correct, that the boundaries currently extend beyond the club, beyond land that the club owns? And would you have an issue with us rolling it back to club-owned property?
This is the first I'm hearing of it, so I'd really have to look and see exactly where we're lining up chairs. And it differs based on weather conditions and volume of members there.
I appreciate that, but I think there may be a valid issue raised with regard to whether, in fact, the club would have to get other permission if it is it's placing chairs in property that it does not own. So I'm wondering if, if there's a way to go ahead and approve this with the boundary modifications, but if there are, issues, if we've missed something, that, provide the opportunity for the club to come back to us if we kind of miscalculated or were wrong in that regard.
Well, this is the first reading, right? So
Yeah,
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 so-
okay.
we've got
This is
time.
not
I
really
think we are not at that point
Okay.
yet, because I have a couple of questions about
Okay.
this, including the boundaries,
Okay.
or I can share my opinion. To clarify, I'm a club member, and I'm using the beach club frequently. Not often, but, Anyway, so my first question would be, under number 1, term. As you explained, Brad, we will, time this agreement so that it falls in place with the agreement expiration date with the resort, which was the original intention. But if the agreement is terminated after 30 days by any of the two parties, what happens then? Because what you explained earlier, it would basically mean that the beach club would need to cease their beach operation, because otherwise they would violate section 16, 302, 805, and 814,
And it would necessitate.
which I find very unreasonable.
It is all it would, and we can certainly look to modify that. It would simply necessitate coming back.
Well, that's my
whether
point.
individually or separately for permission.
I would strongly recommend that we expand that paragraph and clearly determine what will happen under these circumstances, okay? Because I don't think it is reasonable that if, for example, a council would cancel the contract, that then the beach club would need to cease any operation, on the beach. At least, certainly need to put back, cannot bring vehicles on the beach, which makes it very difficult to set up. They cannot store overnight, but they can also not really bring it by hand to the beach because they don't have vehicles. So these 3 ordinances would factually really eliminate the ability for the club to use the beach.
I think you raise
Yeah.
a legitimate issue, and if council has a view on this, I don't think that would be the result. The result would be simply that the beach club or any other similarly situated party would then be operating in violation of the 3 ordinances, which they have been arguably doing for 30 years. It would take the town to enforce that, to either bring a notice of violation. I'm not even sure there's a basis for a cease and desist order. So I'm not sure that the consequence would be that all of a sudden all their operations would cease, because they've been doing the same things without the town permission under those 3 provisions for a long period of time. But we can certainly address.
I
we
will
can
not
certainly
go
address.
into this, because this is, for me, legal bullshit. Because either we have an ordinance and we enforce it, or we don't. And now you're coming with an argument that, well, we might then not enforce it. And no, the point is, what happens?
It's not, the ordinance is not self-enforcing. Our ordinance itself doesn't say
But
that.
council would be required, if a violation occurs to 16.302, 16.805, 16.814, to enforce, which means that the club could not operate, vehicles. That means they cannot bring in their equipment, and they cannot have any commercial activities. Means they cannot even sell a water bottle or a drink.
I agree
right?
that it would be
So
better to clarify the consequences.
please, that's my point, clarify what happens when a party cancels or terminates for cause, without cause. Because it's without cause. That's the critical part here, right? So that's my first point. The second point is, as it relates to the boundaries, I have a very different opinion to Luke. Before we make a change, for the second reading, I think we need to really find out what the legal determinations are, because we all know that First of all, the property that you see right beside the beach club, which looks like a parking lot with that little, bow to the right, that actually, I believe, is still owned by the club because it's an overflow parking on the west side of the building. Or is that,
I think it's
you
owned
guys
by the
own that?
resort. It's,
No, I talked the west side, the west side.
it's owned, I
Yes,
believe, by
that
the
is owned
resort.
by
And I believe, the right side is owned by the resort, so that's something between the resort and
Is owned by the resort.
the east side. That's something between the resort and the club to figure out, right? So if you guys, exactly, if you guys allow them to go to that east boundary beyond their property line on the east, that's between the two of you.
Right.
On the right side, western boundary, first of all, the western boundary could or should, if we really want to go down this way, to basically the western end of that western parking lot, which I believe is probably owned by the club. And we need to see if, because this next property was recently sold by the partners, I believe, to a private owner, I assume, that will build a house there, what is in the contract, of that sale? Maybe there was a stipulation. So before we make any changes right now to the boundaries, is my point, let's get the facts.
Can I just make reference?
And then have a discussion during the next reading about these things.
If I can make reference to this, this is not an ordinance, so it's not a first or second reading, but in regards to the boundaries that you all are looking at, you see the two yellow lines, that's actually Kika-owned property, so it's not privately, it's privately owned, but it's owned by Kika. When this came up, as you remember, Councilmember Heidenfelder, we reached out to Kika because we wondered if they had an agreement, because we didn't have an agreement, to essentially allow the club to set up on their property. At the time, it was, no, there's never been any formal agreement. They've just allowed it. As like the town, we never had any formal agreement. We just allowed it. So we may, I guess, probably need to maybe get something formal from Kika saying that, yes, they will allow this location because this is the location that we have identified. This is the location Kika's always allowed them to set up. So this is within Kika's property.
So
That's where
that
you
would
see
be
the two
actually Kika, so what you're
Right.
saying is that would actually be Kika's jurisdiction.
Correct.
To allow the club to go to the western boundary or not.
Correct.
It's not even related to the property lines,
Correct.
inland. Okay.
Correct.
I'm sorry, which property's Kika's property?
Everything
Yeah.
before the yellow line, everything south of the yellow line, Luke.
Yep. Yeah, but
So the next point-
The
The
state,
beach part is,
Even though it's a
the
state,
beach part
yeah.
above mean high water mark is Kika-owned
Yeah.
property.
but this is mainly below the high water mark,
No.
No, not the dunes.
Yeah.
Not the dunes, Luke.
not where they would be setting up.
And the mid-water line doesn't go all the way to the dunes.
Some of it's above the mean high water, where they're setting up's above the mean high water mark. And that's the area that's owned by Kika.
Okay, so the second point in that respect.
I think we need to see the high water mark because it comes up.
Where I also have disagreement with Luke here is that in section 5B, we require a buffer zone of 25 yards, not feet, yards, which is large, west and east of the boundaries. So that means even if we would reduce, but even if we would not reduce the boundaries, the setup of the club would need to be 25 yards to the west as it relates to the eastern boundary, which takes us very much into the line with the property of the beach club, and the same on the western side, right? We also need to understand that at that part of the island, a regular high tide goes relatively high up, which would the club only allow a single row if the tide schedule is, high tide is during the day, basically would allow the club only within these boundaries and then 25 yards further inwards of the boundary only set up one single line of chairs, which I think is unreasonable. And again, I'm speaking as a club member. Next point that I have raised several times is under 6A, the last bullet point, beach storage boxes. I don't really see a need for these boxes because they are mostly used for the small tables and the umbrellas. And the umbrellas are often brought in by the tractor and the tractor trailer. So I would really argue, or would like to argue, to eliminate beach boxes. Next, under holiday adjustments, which I would very much agree with because it is a busy time, I'm just wondering, Tom, why there are no additional umbrellas listed here, because you're allowing 290 lounge chairs up to 160 and beach stands, but no umbrellas and tables. So that's maybe something you want to look at, because I don't think that you want to leave your members without an umbrella. And then under B, to clarify, the second bullet point. So does that mean that even during holiday season, when they can bring in 290 lounge chairs, they are only allowed to store 200? That means they would need to bring back every day during these holiday seasons 90 chairs back to their storage area. Is that the intent? Because that's how it's written now.
That is what it's written, that's what it states.
Yes. So that's maybe also something you guys want to look at, right? Just out of practicality, because I would be concerned about safety when you know how, these chairs to bring back. So that was it. Thank you. From my side.
All good questions and comments. So as you noted, this is not a first reading. This is not an ordinance. This is simply the town granting permission to operate consistent with the three ordinances and under a set of conditions. What I would suggest is that we'll sit down with the club and talk about each of these issues that have been identified and come back to hopefully council next month with a revised agreement that addresses appropriately each of all these issues, assuming we can achieve a meeting of the minds, which I would assume we could. Does that sound reasonable? Mm-hmm. Therefore, table consideration of this move to table consideration of this agreement at this point in time.
I think table is the wrong word. Just fix the issues, bring it back. I know that table is the right,
It needs to
legal
be-
word.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it would need to
it should not be resting. It should really be brought back in a timely fashion.
Well, that's what tabling
Yeah,
is.
legally, we have to table it because it's listed as
Yeah.
approved and authorized. So you have to take some action. Action
Yeah.
would be to table it.
And table, it leaves it on the table that it can be brought back then at the next council meeting. So
You need a motion.
reiterate my motion to table action
So
on
moved.
East Beach Operations Agreement at this time.
Second?
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. The next agenda item is another resolution, not an ordinance, a resolution 2024-04 to adopt a gift policy for municipal officers and employees. It's provided at tab 9. Could I entertain a motion for approval of the resolution?
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion?
Yes.
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 Mr. Councilmember
Ladies
Peck.
first, of course.
This is the gift policy.
Yes.
We got a suggestion from a member of the Planning Commission, Jean Babinek, that we could enhance this policy by prohibiting vendors from making gifts to designated individuals. He didn't specify who, but I'm assuming that would include council members and Toki staff. We could impose a penalty for a vendor who violates the policy, which could include suspension or termination of their license to do business on Kiowa. I go back to Mr. McElveen's comment at the outset of the meeting, applauding council action on this point. I think that I could certainly be supportive of the addition that Jean proposed here. about the prohibition of vendors from making gifts to certain parties.
Just an observation on that, and I would again invite council to jump in on this. This gift policy is designed to apply to municipal officers and employees. I'm supportive of the thrust of what the Planning Commissioner Babinek had suggested, but I'm wondering if that might more appropriately be cited or located within our business license ordinance or somewhere associated therewith, where we already have provisions related to the circumstances under which a business license could be revocated. And if so, if town administrator or council agree with that, would you, Councilmember Kay, be fine if we separately pursue his suggestion in another ordinance? And then it would be
I
an
have
ordinance.
no objection to that off the top of my head. I think as long as it's incorporated into an official document, I'm going to be supportive.
Okay, and it would be actually probably embedded in our ordinance, which in contrast to this, would entail first and second readings.
Okay.
So I'm not clear on what you just suggested. You talking just about vendor gifts, or what was your suggestion?
What the Planning Commission member, Gene Babinek, was proposing is there be a prohibition on vendors offering gifts to certain persons. Because all the onus here is, and it was intended to be, on the officers' employees from receiving gifts. My point is, this again, is to be attendant to officers and employees. If you wanted to apply something to vendors, and he was suggesting that potentially revoke a license if they violated a prohibition on offering gifts to covered officials, that should better reside in our business license ordinance, where we already have language that talks about the circumstances under which a license might be revoked. So we could look at adding a provision to that section of the code addressing vendors.
So, okay, thank you. My view on this is like twofold. So one, I would say that what you're suggesting we should do, but it should also be a gift policy that governs the officers' employees. I worked for the financial business for 30 years, and for the better part of the last 20 years, we were not allowed to give gifts nor receive gifts. So I think we sort of crossed that Rubicon that gift giving in a professional environment is broadly taboo anymore. And I don't really see the need for anybody giving gifts to town employees or town employees giving gifts to other people, except for maybe retirements or things like that. But it just opens a can of worms for vendors and for employees that you could just do away with completely by saying no gifts. If you have gift giving, the other thing that you would need to do would be to measure and manage it. So you'd have to put in a gift receival policy, document the gift, who it came from, who's going to keep track of all these things to know that there are no violations occurring. So I think we're heading down the right track of making sure that our ethics are very, very high. And does $50 or $25 or whatever, does that really matter to the employees over the long period of time? Does it matter to a vendor over a long period of time? I'm of the view where you just make this just a no gift policy, and it just solves a lot of problems. It makes it easy to administer, and it's very clear. You don't have to worry about, okay, do these golf balls cost more than whatever the amount is? If you're talking about pens and pencils, okay, fine, let's make an exception for that. But this just, it takes us halfway down a path where we should just go all the way down and just say no, and it's cleaner for everybody to administer, and it's cleaner for us to defend, and it's cleaner for the employees to follow. So I would probably have the view that we just make it no gifts and move from there, and it simplifies everything.
Yeah, I agree with Luke. This is opening far too many doors, and will create far too many discussions Is the value of 3 golf balls now above a certain value of $50 or not? In the corporate world that I lived in, 0 gifts. Both giving and receiving, basta. It was a big thing, of course, when I lived in China and I introduced that policy of ours, at that time, but this is 20 years ago. I would strongly suggest that any type of gift giving and gift receiving is not appropriate because, I just give you an example. I have a friend that is a developer. He throws me, and there's nothing business-wise going on. He throws me a birthday party. A year later, he actually brings forward something to council. It's just not clean. It opens too many doors, too many cases. I would strictly, prohibit any gift giving and any gift receiving and be done with it. So that's the same as Luke. What does, in that context, my next question, and I wanted to make that comment anyway. Next, what is exactly a municipal officer? Just to clarify.
A good question. We have not defined that in this ordinance, and this resolution, and we probably need to do so. Municipal officer is a term that's defined under the State Ethics Act, but this, you're absolutely right, does not make specific reference to that definition.
But would that include only elected officials?
No, it does not.
Does it also include appointed officials?
Yes, it does.
But, and appointed officials, how far? So would an Arts Council member then also fall under this? It would. Does that make sense? Would a Turtle Patrol volunteer fall under this? So boundaries need to be defined, right? It's clear that council, all employees, council, BZA, planning commission members, environmental commission members, etc., public safety members, public works members, if we get to this at some point. That's clear. If it really should go all the way to arts and Turtle, I don't know. But I think we definitely need to clarify this. And then the last thing that I would suggest, and we should remember, we started all of this, with, a conflict of interest policy, which somehow, ended up nowhere. What is very important as an experience for my corporate life is that you remind people, means employees and whatever municipal officers will be, of this gift policy, because we have a lot of, exchange, especially on the volunteer side. So I would suggest that we have some kind of a one-page document that these people have to sign on a recurring basis, right? Just to remind them. Right? So every 2 years or every year or something like this, every employee, every municipal officer, whatever that means, would need to re-sign a one page saying, I acknowledge that I have read and understood that gift policy. Just as a reminder, it doesn't change the legal ramifications here, I would believe, but just as an ongoing regular reminder that people understand there is this policy and I am not allowed to do this. That would have been my comments here.
And if
So-
we go that route, then that moves it back into a resolution format, right? As opposed to being part of an ordinance.
We're talking about two different things. We would not necessarily need to make it an ordinance in order to apply to municipal officers and employees. The reason we referenced ordinance is simply with regard to vendors because there's already a mechanism for dealing with revocation of business licenses. All good comments, and in fact, there are different models out there. $0, sometimes it's $100, $200. I don't feel strongly, I'm fine with the idea of not attaching a value. I would note a couple things. One, you could address that by simply eliminating under B, or multiple gifts from the same donor having an aggregate value of $50 or more. And you could then also address that by eliminating the last sentence of C. Now, that says may not receive or accept any gift. But then it says when, 1, 2, and 3. Now, is the suggestion that people who are serving in these positions can't accept any kind of gift
No.
from any kind of person?
That would potentially constitute a conflict of interest, yes. And
okay.
the other
Okay.
explanations are not necessary, because if you give multiple gifts of 0 plus 0 plus 0, it
Separating-
is still 0.
I'm just separating two issues. One is the issue of a dollar amount. We could eliminate the dollar amount as I suggested, but you would still, the prohibition would only be against receiving a gift that has any value. There's no dollar amount associated with it if 1, 2, and 3 are met.
Delete 1, 2, and 3.
No. So if you were doing that, then literally it would be, if you're a municipal official, you couldn't accept a gift from anybody.
Right.
Literally, you couldn't accept from your best friend, even though they had no business context or relationship with, you can't accept one from a family member, you can't accept a gift from anybody. I don't think that's
No, that's not the intention, but,
Yeah.
but what is missing under B 1, 2, 3 is this forward-looking aspect. As I said, I have a friend, he's a developer, he throws me a birthday party, a year later he does something that actually becomes a potential conflict of interest. So I think there is a necessity to keep somehow 1, 2, and 3 under B, but I think there needs to be a 4 that also looks forward and say, please, remember, when you look forward, could that create a conflict of interest in the future? That's the determining factor. For me, if my wife or my children give me something, I can clearly say that's not. If friends are giving me something that, are just friends, have no business relations on the island, etc. I mean, but if there is something that could occur, commercially, so to speak, in the future, that's where there is a boundary.
So,
Okay. So,
a
which-
reasonable point, I would note that 2 doesn't have any temporal limitation to it, but if you were trying to be explicit in that regard, and.
It needs to be worded in a way people understand.
But I'm saying, I don't know how, I'm trying to envision, and maybe you can help me with this, or counsel, how you would write something that says, if ever in the future, that there could be a business nexus.
Just
or
be
relate-
mindful. And that reminds, you cannot foresee the future. But I think, again, we want to remind everybody on a regular basis that this policy exists. If there's a paragraph that reminds us, think about the future if it could create a conflict of interest, right? And that reminds me about one thing that I forgot to mention earlier. What is also missing here is kind of a regulatory process. So, for example, I have a friend that is a developer. He gives me something. Where can I go for advice? Yeah, and that's especially important for employees, that they know, are they going to HR? Are they going to Stephanie? Are they going to our town attorney? Where do you go to clarify?
So, and again, a good point. One thing that was worth noting is, perhaps unbeknownst to many people, we do have both an ethical conduct conflict of interest policy and a gift policy in the employee handbook, and there is a procedure that is outlined with regard to employees. But you make a very good point with regard to what, this is simply a prohibition. One of the issues that had risen, and it doesn't, if we simply prohibit, then it's prohibited, and hopefully there's clarity around all of that. But you raise a perfectly good point. I think it's a very valid one, and it's the principal feedback we got from Boone and Mac's colleague, Nick, who focuses his practice on this issue, is that with respect to less this, because it's kind of straightforward prohibition, all the other potential provisions, and there are a couple of drafts that we've been working on of a broader ethics policy, you need to then establish a set of procedures, and probably need to establish an ethics board. That's what the recommendation is, and that's what the State Ethics Commission has, a policy and process. So the question is, that's that's part of the reason we pulled out the decision and the recommendation of council was to pull out the gifts policy from the broader ethics policy, since it's much more straightforward. It seems to be the issue that presents itself most often and could be more directly addressed and
But,
just say, here's a blanket
just-
prohibition.
Yeah, but keep it simple. Just, for example, for where can I go to consult, just say town attorney. That's all. Because I don't want to disclose
You
to
could
an
do
ethics
that,
committee.
you could do that in the ordinary
Yeah, but I don't
course.
want to disclose to the ethics committee, whoever is sitting on this, but it's certainly more than one person, that I have that issue with a friend of mine. I want to go to somebody that I can trust and keep it confidential.
But there is no reason, this wouldn't preclude you from doing that in any event. If you simply want to say, if you have any questions, go to the town attorney, we could certainly say, put a
No, if you have
sentence in there.
questions or concerns, consult with a town attorney, period.
Yeah, we can certainly
That's all.
add that.
That's all.
Yeah,
Just make
absolutely.
sure people
Yeah,
understand
certainly.
what to do.
Now, to be clear, there is a gifts, there are gifts provisions in the state ethics code. Those would still apply. This is much more restrictive by intent and design than the state policy.
I hope so.
Yes, it is, but it would still apply, and if you have any issues that arise under the state one, the town attorney would probably say you need to go check with the Ethics Commission. So, how do we, so if we, again, one way we can easily solve the dollar amount issue by striking the clause in the sentence that I mentioned. It would just get rid of any reference to any dollar amount. So you couldn't receive a gift of any value under the three circumstances. And then we could we could define municipal officer to be consistent with the state definition, or we could further limit it.
Well, in this, it says municipal officer or employee. You could just say town employee, but then that doesn't cover appointed officials and.
That's right. And there was already
Elected.
a conflict, a gifts policy that is applicable. We could broaden it, but there's already a gifts policy applicable to.
Yeah, but that's the
town
point I was trying to make earlier. And I know that you're all in this, ethics commission, you have probably a standing phone line with them. The point is not that. The point is to make sure people understand what the policy is. Nobody is reading whatever is written in Columbia. That's just practical truth. If we want to do something and we want to do it right, we need to do it in a way that people can read it, understand it, and execute upon.
And that's what this is
And
intended
that's
to be.
what this is intended, and we are not, eliminating this. We're just giving you suggestions for what actually should be added to that policy to make it, comprehensive.
And then the question becomes, again, if the sentiment is to eliminate any dollar reference, that's easily doable. There can easily be added a sentence to say, any questions regarding the implementation of the policy, please consult with the town attorney. And we could define municipal officer either by reference to the state code, or we could
I would list them.
define it specifically as to the categories that we want to cover.
Yeah.
And I would go back to what Michael said. In my business, we had to sign a quarterly statement about ethics, about gifts, about all of these things. And that helps remind you not to forget. So it's really a protective mechanism for the employee, more so than anything else. It just reminds them, okay, I'm not supposed to take any gifts from anybody.
And everybody on the volunteer side, has that same experience. We didn't do it quarterly. We, for example, did it once a year. But I think everybody that also serves as a volunteers knows that from their past experience.
And you mentioned something earlier, and I think that under E, number 2, gifts from a person with a family or personal relationship with an employee, when the circumstances make it clear that it's personal, that's okay. I think that's covered. So you said not any gifts. Some gifts are allowed.
No,
But
I'm
under-
saying that the general proposition is you can't, but that, no.
So your
you
brother
can't
can-
receive any gift
But this allows your brother to give you a gift.
But E says that's not a gift for purposes of this policy. That's how that's handled. It doesn't constitute a gift. You still can't receive a gift of anything of value, but this defines away that as a gift for purposes of this policy.
And then the other thing is on number 3 under E, I might leave in retirements, but marriages are, you just give an exception to a rule where somebody could give a big gift because somebody got married. It's beyond the bounds that I'm used to.
Well,
Zero is-
again, and that's fair. I would just note that it is qualified by modest, reasonable, and customary. But if you
We
want to
say
take away
0
marriage,
here, you say 0 over here.
because you haven't defined that as a gift, you could say, you could eliminate the entire category.
Yes.
Yes.
It's just.
We're
Brad,
trying to
if we
create
want
the
to do it, we
appearance
should do
of-
it right. And
Yeah,
we should
the
do it
appearance
easy
of
to
no
understand.
conflict, to do things right, as Michael's saying, and to be clear for everybody.
Okay.
And you mentioned something earlier, and I've been thinking about this. So this is great, but we might also want to change the business license policy to make it incumbent upon them not to give gifts.
Just understand, again, I'm open to a really stringent gift policy, but what you would be saying is, if you are a municipal official,
Mark Primar can't give you a marriage gift.
and you can't.
Sorry, Mark, if you're still here.
Mark Primar.
He's generous. He's generous to a fault, but
Or can't send flowers, and that may be fine. That may be fine.
But where do you, but Brad?
On an illness.
Is, a small bouquet okay? Or is a
No,
humongous thing is
that's what I'm
okay?
saying.
That's the problem we have always discussed in the corporate world, and that's why we always settled for a 0.
Okay.
Because everything else opens doors to interpretation
Interpretation.
and, I thought this was just a nice flower, but you think it's too much?
But again, I don't have, an issue with making it really, really strict.
and again, for your
Because
benefit.
in the federal public sector, you couldn't accept any gifts either.
For your benefit and for the audience, in the financial industry, we couldn't get a sleeve of golf balls, nothing.
Nothing.
And it was okay, because there was abuses in the past, and the fact that it was corrected was actually
So,
great.
just be clear, that varies extraordinarily from company to company and public jurisdiction to public jurisdiction. New York State is super stringent about their employees at New York Common, but like not Texas, but Colorado and Arizona, they simply say report. They don't have any restriction on gifts, they simply say report.
But again, we are here, we are looking at this, and again, my experience is stringency. I couldn't even invite an automotive customer of mine with a beer. He had to pay for his own beer when we went out after a meeting, after a day. So that's the rule.
Can I just ask for a quick clarification? Gifts made to the municipality, what does that mean?
I'm sorry?
Gifts made to the municipality? I only ask this because I know staff is going to ask. There are times, typically during the holidays, where contractors drop off a tray of cookies, and we put it in the kitchen for all employees. Based on this, do we then
I
have
would
to try to throw
consider
the
that
cookies
to be a
back?
gift to the municipality.
Okay,
It's
that's what I
not to
was
the
hoping.
benefit of any one
Right, because that
individual.
is,
It's
that
not
goes,
because it's not a gift to a single person or
Right.
to a small group, it's to everybody.
yeah, they give it to an employee, and what I direct them to is just put it in the kitchen, and so they
Yes.
normally put everything in the kitchen so everyone can enjoy it.
Yeah.
Okay, just wanted to.
And
Question is,
I find it a little bit, I would find it very harsh if, for instance, we could not give a gift if somebody's mom dies, that we couldn't send some kind of acknowledgement, a flower arrangement or something. I think this needs a little bit more looking at.
that actually right now is not defined as a gift. But even if it were, what Councilmember Heidingsfeld and Farrell were suggesting is not define it as a gift, but it would still then only be impermissible to receive if it met 1, 2, or 3. At least as this is drafted. And by the way, this was actually kind of tried to pull together from a couple of states that have pretty stringent, so and that's fine, if we want to make it even more stringent. My concern is if we make it too stringent, how it's going to impact the people who are serving on committees, commissions, task forces, and things like that. But
So take that the next step further. What is your concern explicitly about those people?
whether it becomes so onerous and there's a strict prohibition that it might discourage people from even deciding to join, to be a volunteer, because they don't want to run the possibility of tripping the prohibition. Again, I'm just posing the question. I'm used to strict. I'm used to strict. When I ran an agent, couldn't accept anything, or did not anyway.
So we beaten that
Yeah.
horse to death by now.
So we can,
Does anybody else want to beat us with, kind of
well, there
whack
may
for the
be
horse?
further comment, so
Or Mark, you have a comment about your gift giving?
So it sounds like we need to table this as well.
No, just bring it back with those changes.
Which means tabling.
Tabling it,
Table
and
and
bring
change.
it back for consideration at the October meeting with, the changes that have been suggested.
Yes.
And we'll do that, and we'll work on a definition of municipal officer, and we'll eliminate any reference to dollar value.
Can you just change that to town employees rather than a municipal officer?
Well,
Then
there
you're
are
not an employee.
Yeah,
And
the whole point
elected
of
officials.
this, there already is a gifts restriction for town employees. The purpose of this and a broader ethics policy was to apply to council members, to commission members,
Okay.
to committee members, to task force members, and other.
then you should define municipal officer then. Okay. So I move to table this until corrections are made for Resolution 2024-04 and bring it back when corrections are made.
So moved. There's a gentleman standing. I don't know if you want.
He's for the next, he's
Okay,
next, yeah.
do I have a second?
Yes, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. All right, Stephanie, you
So-
want to tee up consideration of the ACARTA budget?
Yes, I have Matthew from COG. He is the communications director. This is every year, because we are a member of, because we are a member of CARTA, this is for the CARTA budget. We, council, you all have to approve their budget every year. You have a copy of that in your packet. Matthew is here to answer any questions that you might have in regards to the CARTA budget.
And I guess the big picture question I had is, this is mandated by law.
Absolutely, yes.
Both our participation
Yeah.
and the
We're
approval of the
required to, yeah.
budget.
Correct.
But what benefit does the Kiowa Island community get from the dollars that we are required by law to provide to CARTA?
Again, good question. I'm here because we're required, as you are a municipality in the county, that Charleston, Berkeley, Dorchester County. So basically, it's a formality. The town of Kiowa really doesn't gain anything from CARTA per se. But again, this is more so a formality to let you know what we are doing and also get your approval,
So
We have
the-
no-
just like the other municipalities.
I would add, we have no direct, you're right, we have no direct impact. One of the things is that not every jurisdiction have a seat at the CARTA table. We do, we attend the meetings monthly. The mayor, we have a proxy attend for the mayor. We get a chance to vote. Granted, it's nothing that impacts Kiowa, but we do get a chance to vote on all projects. We are invited and participate at various CARTA activities. We have in the past, when I started here, probably about 2 times, we have had CARTA out here. We've tried to figure out ways to bring CARTA service to Kiowa Seabrook, maybe even just right now get it to Johns Island. I'm hoping that would happen. But We have talked about that. We've talked before with the resort and with Seabrook, Sequoia, trying to figure out how to get their staffs doing some sort of express service. So we have been trying to figure things out, but no, directly at this time,
So
no.
that's where, Stephanie, thank you, anticipated where I was going with this, because given the congestion on the roads, all the employees, the 2,000 or 3,000 employees that come down Betsy Carson and either River or Bohicket each and every day to work here, and given the fact that the county looks like it's rolling back on its roads improvements, on the southern end of Johns Island, given the fact that we have, we're going to continue, the county continues to approve new development projects, whether it's expansion of Kiowa River. Most folks may not be aware that now the PDD for a fairly large mixed-use development at the corner of Betsy Carson River and Bohicket is going forward, right across from Ace Hardware. That, we haven't had much success before. Why not, and what can we do? Because it seems like some public transportation could help address some of those employee transit issues that we're dealing with right now.
I would say we probably should start talking with Mr. McBride now, since Johns Island has a representative. Start talking with him. There is a service that comes out to Freshfields. It is the rural transportation service that's operated by CARTA. People have to sign up for. But I would say that what we probably should start doing, because I know when Anna Johnson was on county council, she was trying to get the service here. But I think he's going to be at the town hall, but that's one of the things that we can talk about, is at least trying to get it first to Maybank and get it on Johns Island, and then we can probably get it to come down this way. But I think that would probably be the first
So
step.
let me ask the mayor's question a different way. If we don't approve the budget, is there any impact on you guys?
I'm going to be completely honest with you. This is my third week as communications director.
I can answer that, Charlie, for him. I used to sit.
I like his answer.
Yeah, I used to attend these meetings a lot, and no, there's really no impact. It would still get
So
passed
another
by the
question.
board.
Does any of our residents pay a tax that ends up with Carter?
It's a Charleston County. Property tax.
So that's where I'm going with this. So a portion of our property taxes are paid to this organization, while literally, by definition, we have zero benefit. Is that a correct statement?
There is no CARTA transportation services provided to this portion of Kiowa Island, or this portion of Johns Island and the Sea Islands.
But not even to Johns Island.
I'm not even.
Well, there's a service, it's the rural service, but no, there's no CARTA service that comes to Johns Island. It's just a rural transportation service that comes. But on the revenue side, it shows where all the money comes from. A lot of it's through the sales tax, Charleston County sales tax, and the next is federal funded, and then the fare box. Those are the three top revenue sources.
This is a
So
matter.
it's not property tax?
Correct.
Okay.
It's not property taxes? It's.
Well, it's the Charleston County sales tax.
It's the sales tax.
It's federal tax and fare box, but not, I
So
don't
not
recall ever
So
seeing.
then why
a
are
Charleston-
we participating in this if we're not?
When CARTA was established, somehow Kiowa, there was a number of municipalities. Somehow Kiowa during that time was able to get our name as part of that charter. So that's why we have a seat at the table. For instance, Seabrook doesn't have a seat at the table. Not all municipalities do, but we have a seat at the table because when it was chartered, somehow we were able to get a seat at the table.
Seat of table has been so meaningful over the years.
Yes.
But again, our residents are not paying a tax dollar for this.
Not directly. They're paying it through sales tax. Charleston County-
Yeah,
Yeah, right, but not through property.
Not the
Not-
property
not
tax.
property tax.
That's
Okay,
the-
thank you for that
Because that's the
correction.
determining factor for me.
yeah.
If our property
Sales tax.
taxes would have ended
Sales
up
tax.
here, I would have declined this proposal. If it's sales tax,
The
I think
county sales tax, yeah.
that's proper. So I don't have a problem with that. Thank you.
Again, our hands are essentially tied on this unless we can change either the state law or county ordinances.
The only thing, Brad, in the interest of efficiency, maybe we should really consider seizing that seat. I mean, our staff has so much to do.
yeah.
Not sure that this is time well spent.
And that is not unreasonable unless we were able to.
Correct.
In a fairly short order, get some indication that they might be able to, they would be willing to revisit the policy of not serving Johns Island. And maybe we can talk about that with Councilmember McBride and others. Could I have a motion to approve the CARTA fiscal 2025 budget, please?
So moved.
Second. Grudgingly.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hesitantly, aye. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for coming out and
Appreciate
staying for so long.
Okay, the next agenda item is to consider approval. Okay, goes to James Island, but not Johns Island, great. To consider approval of a contract amendment with LS3P, which has been our consultant on the Kiowa Next Comprehensive Plan project for additional cost. Materials are in tab 11. I don't know if there are any members of the Planning Commission here that were intending.
Well, we had two.
Well, maybe
Yeah.
they're both, he's been, Councilmember Farrell
There's other
was
commentary.
and has been working with the Planning Commission. We received 3 or 4 inputs from Planning
And we
Commission
have one
members
here, John Conley.
that had,
Joined.
they had concerns, reservations, suggestions regarding this potential contract amendment. So I would consider a motion to, like a motion to approve the contract, which would allow us to then have discussion.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
Madeline, do you want to go first?
Yes, although I'm not, obviously not on the planning commission now, I was on the planning commission when this process of drafting the comprehensive plan began and was probably involved for close to a year, so did have considerable experience with. what-
Madeline, can you speak up just a little bit, please?
Sure. So as a planning commission member, I had a lot of, almost a year's worth of experience working with this particular contractor. Not sure how to resolve, how I would vote to resolve this, because there is no doubt that this, that LSP3 has put additional time and money into this project. However, the work product throughout has been less than what I would have expected. The Planning Commission throughout the process provided a lot of feedback to this consultant on directions to go, changes to be made, improvements that needed to be made. And I think that oftentimes there was lip service given to those suggestions, but we didn't see any particular follow-through. I would quote some of the feedback we got from current Planning Commission members, that the product was substandard, delivery was last minute, it was often lacking some critical insights. There was a point made that before additional time and money was put into this on the part of the consultant, they should have gotten permission from the town to do so, and that was not done. Another Planning Commission member suggested that no further funding be made available, and that the staff and the Planning Commission could finish the project. And I know, having spoken to Stephanie, that she's been working diligently on finishing this up, and that a lot of what Stephanie's done has been met very satisfactorily by members of the Planning Commission. Again, I could probably be convinced to to offset some of the cost, but not the full amount, not given the quality of the product that's been received.
Before turning to other council members, Stephanie, maybe it's useful to provide a little context on this, because when you and I had talked about this, that there were really two related issues. One was their position that they had expended a lot more time and effort and therefore money than they had originally contracted for, even though they had never requested any modification of the contract at that time from the town, but that the additional potential contracted amendment to the contract was not so much to just address that, but it was to help complete the project. Because there was thought that maybe there would be additional need for LSP3 to assist with the project finalization. Per the memo, they haven't done any additional work since June, and it seems to be the consensus view of, I think, staff and council members that their assistance isn't necessary to finalize the project.
That's correct. Yeah, I think, and Mr. Taylor can come up because he may be able to give a little bit more color to what has happened, because I didn't attend all the meetings. But you're right, the Planning Commission, the meetings that I did attend, there was kind of I wouldn't say a disconnect, but the consultant at the time was not really listening to the planning commissioners. And he would come back, I think, with his own agenda, and it was a lot of back and forth. Because of that, there was a lot of time spent on the consultant's side, not saying it was our fault. It could be a little bit of both, I'm not sure, but they spent a lot of time. That consultant then left, I believe in December of last year, and David Burt with LS3P took over. And he took over in January. He was under the impression that the work was pretty much done, and that all he was doing was just doing some cleanup work. So when he talked with staff, he did not anticipate as much work that he received. So they just kept doing the redos. They kept coming to multiple meetings. Our initial proposal did not have as many meetings, but nevertheless, we're the client. They kept coming to the meetings, and he was just racking up the costs without coming to us saying, hey, this is well beyond what I thought in terms of edits. There's going to be additional costs, until he approached me and said, we did roughly $43,000 over budget. So what they have proposed in terms of that cost is everything that they've done thus far. And then that's when they asked if the town would be willing to essentially cover half of it. They then said if we wanted them to do additional work beyond that, that's when they put the $5,000 in, and I just said, at this point, we've taken over. We'll do everything. I can figure it out. So that is kind of their story, is that, yes, they realized they dropped the ball. Their initial consultant maybe didn't follow direction that great. And because of that, when David came on board, they just thought that everything was great and that they were done, and he found out that, no, we were not happy, and so they then started doing edits. John may be able to get a little bit more information on, in terms of kind of
The only
where
thing
we're
I
at.
would add is sort of post the original project manager leaving the project, is that once Principal Burt came on to sort of lead the commissioners through this Kill Next update, that the expectation of redlining the document as a full group, that did exhaust a lot of time. And so where that's not a traditional practice of 7 commissioners plus more than 10 people in the room redlining one document, and so that did exhaust multiple meetings. So that would be something just to add into that number 4 point that's listed in your materials, of sort of the expectations of the time frame of the revisions that were made. So that's the only thing I think I would add to that would sort of complex the issue here.
And I would add that the additional meetings throughout the entire process that had to be called were largely the result of the consultant not listening to a very clear input and feedback from the Planning Commission on what needed to be fixed. There was a repeated attempt to fit a square peg into a round hole by the consultant, and the Planning Commission was consistently clear on trying to set the consultant back in the right direction. There was a lack of recognition and the uniqueness of Kiowa. Luke, you can add to this.
So my perspective in this context, I was, at least as an observer, involved in the beginning of the project when we still had liaisons and as council members, was never impressed about a single thing. Second, I have only heard complaints over the entire period of these, 14 months or so that we used them, from various Planning Commission members. And third, I've been a consultant for 12 years of my life, up to a co-owner of the largest consulting firm in Europe. We never would have asked a client to cover additional cost. We always said, we made a mistake when we calculated the whole thing, and we ate it. I cannot approve this request.
I've sat quiet because I think you personally know my position, but for the public, this has probably been my worst experience with a consultant ever. In 45 years of business, and I also have 2 emails from planning commissioners who would say the same thing. I'm not going to enter their names into the record because they could have come, but the consultant did not listen to what we asked, did not supply fundamental information we asked for, did not edit the documents the way we redlined and edited for over a year. We got a lot of the consultant's interpretation of what we needed and not ours. When we asked for data, we didn't get the supporting data that supported his recommendations, much less what we needed to make recommendations of our own. He was wholly unresponsive, and it really did appear like he had an agenda of his own and didn't know. The worst part was, even with his own agenda, he didn't understand Kiowa. And we tried and tried and tried several times, multiple times, to have him understand this is not downtown Charleston, this is not downtown Columbia. This is a resort island that doesn't want certain things. And he would literally come back the next time with, I heard you, but I thought we should talk about this again. After we'd said 2 or 3 times, we don't want this mixed-use development in this location down by the ocean course or things like that. We had talked before I got off Planning Commission about having the consultant fired, and the chairman didn't want to do that at the time. So I, in good conscience, can't approve any further expenditure, and I don't know what our lawyers would advise us, but for the increase, that the cost overruns, I would agree with what somebody else said. The cost overruns are purely because they were redoing stuff or doing stuff we'd asked for time and time again. I'll just quote from a couple of the letters, but they're the same things that Madeline has said. In these meetings, I've found the work product of LSP3 to be substandard, numerous typographic and grammatical issues, ill-prepared, nothing has been done to track the changes we've made, and a tedious revision of follow history documentation. Delivery at the last minute with no time to review and lacking critical insights. So I'll stop there with that one. And the other one would be basically the same information. I agree with what the previous person has said. I'm not sure that a new contract would accomplish anything. The work product from this consultant has been substandard at best, and they haven't delivered at all what is listed in the old contract. So this is, again, the worst experience I've ever been involved with. I don't know what our lawyers would advise, but I wouldn't spend another dime with this consultant, and I would terminate them this afternoon.
I defer to the Planning Commission, former and current members who've been much closer to this process. I must say, the very first meeting I sat in on was my jaw kind of dropped because the council, a couple of Planning Commission members were giving very clear direction as to what they wanted to have changed in the document, and the words that were coming out of the prior consultant's mouth or representative was, well, we'll take that under consideration. And then when he started talking about, trying to create all these commercial walkable nodes all over the island, it was clear that there was kind of a disconnect from the get-go, and that their expertise is largely in, urban renewal and urban centers. So I think there was a clear sentiment on the part of the council to not approve the contract amendment. But I think there is a broader lesson to be learned here. We as a town have not done a consistently good job of managing consultant relationships. And we need to figure out how we can do better going forward to, if we identify issues like this, there was probably a disconnect in the first instance as to what their expertise was and what we really needed, we're looking for. And there were probably opportunities to nip this in the bud earlier on and probably should have done so. So some of that ultimately is on us as a town, but yes, and what I also saw, in addition to the mindset where they provide information where they just got objectively wrong how far it is to Charleston International Airport and things like that, and how much time it took, you kind of put your hands up. So I'm not sure if do we need any formal action, because this is to approve, we're simply not approving. Do we need to vote to not approve?
Yes, please.
So I move that we do not approve any further.
So we move to, there was a motion to approve.
Oh, sorry.
Can we just say nay?
Yeah, all in favor? All opposed?
Opposed?
The matter is addressed. The final agenda items under tab F, it's amendment to the Arts and Cultural Events Council Charter. Don't need to, I hope, spend a lot of time on this. We've been updating kind of routinely a routinized process of committee charters. These charter amendments are to reflect kind of the evolution of the Arts Council, add the addition of other members, as well as the expanded role of Ruthie Foster, who is the person primarily responsible for managing the arts and cultural program. And I would request a motion to approve the amended charter. And by the way, the staff, Stephanie, Aaron, or Ruthie are happy to answer any questions.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion or questions? All in favor?
Madeline wanted to say something, or?
No, I was going to vote in favor.
Okay, I have a few questions. So,
Okay, I'm sorry.
little ones. So, members of the Arts Council are appointed for 1 year. Isn't that unusual to other committees or councils that we have?
No, a lot of them are just 1 year. I mean, we have the exception of like Planning Commission and BZA, but the other
Okay,
ones
that's
are
fine. Yeah,
annual.
that's a different topic. And then there's a discrepancy between, and thank you for 32 pages, by the way. That was a very pleasant read. There's a disconnect between what you call the Arts and Cultural Events Council Member Manual and this other two-pager, as it relates to the appointment. So isn't just the council appointing it? Well, first of all, it is said that it's approved by the mayor and the town council. I'm not exactly sure what the difference is here. And then the manual says appointed by the mayor with the consent of the town council. That was never my understanding. I thought that all of these appointments are coming before council, and council members, no matter if mayor or not, vote. So I think
That's
there needs to
correct.
be some clarification in the
And we
wording.
have been, the council has
Yeah.
been approving
So
the,
both documents, so this one that is redlined, as well as the manual need to be adjusted.
make
in that
conforming
sense.
changes. Thank you.
And that was it, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? All in favor
Aye.
with that change?
Aye.
These
Aye,
two
thank you.
changes, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Ruthie, in particular.
Yes, and look forward to the
Famous
upcoming
Ruthie.
season. Hope everybody else does as well.
Well,
Citizen-
that's a good point that you're saying, just as a personal note. I sometimes feel it difficult to find something that interests me. I'm not a very traditional arts person, so ballet kind of goes this way and classic goes this way. I was lucky to find two this year, but I would hope that there's a little bit more that goes down
Councilmember
my...
Heidingsfelder, have suggestion in your retirement years from the council that you think about joining the Arts Council and contributing to.
I have already mapped out my next steps, so there's no room for that one, sorry. I was
But,
just giving...
I will say to that point that there is a very robust discussion within the council about the range of programming and diversity, and there's been a concerted effort to expand the council to bring together different perspectives so that going forward that there will be a greater range of diversity in programming. Citizen comments, Mr. Spencer, you are up first, and then anybody else would like to comment thereafter is welcome to do so.
This stuff, and I also wanted to make...
Just three quick topics. First of all, I also want to echo thank you, Councilman Heidelfelder, for your commitment to the city and town over the years. Your dedication and commitment have been obvious. We saw it when we first moved to Kiowa, and thank you for your contributions. I hope you enjoy your retirement, or whatever that turns out to be. I appreciated the update on the mediation. And I frankly have kind of landed for now, kind of where Councilmember Heidingsfelder also commented earlier. I'm becoming much more aware in the community of a division that's going on. Depending on what your constituency is in the community, you know, people were promised a club, they're frustrated they're not getting a club. People are concerned about adjacent property owner impacts to development and what the different decisions and the processes are doing, and you know, how is that being protected. I'm in discussions with more and more people and hearing from more and more people that there's misinformation or lack of information out there to some extent. And I think the cloud of litigation has only made it worse. It's unfortunate, I think, that the litigation is going on, because I think that the more and more I'm engaged with the community, the more and more they're looking for information. It would be great if the town could put out a fact sheet, or jointly with the developer put out a fact sheet at some point. I'm shooting in the blind a little bit because I don't know what you've been discussing behind closed doors. But some thoughts on this is I'm hoping that the plan of action includes getting to the point where legally the town and the developer can truly have constructive comments by exhausting administrative processes, going through the right appeals, and expediting those things that probably should have happened a long time ago, but we're moving forward instead of backwards. So I just really wanted to communicate more than anything that as I've been engaged more and more with the community, it's clear there's division that people don't want in the community. And the sooner that the town and all parties can take the right steps towards accountability on wherever the accountability lies, and resolve this and communicate it, the better. And I know that's what you want too, but I felt like it was important to voice that. Final comment, a topic came up earlier today. I have a lot of experience in the cellular industry and tower placement and how those decisions are made. So I'm happy to assist whoever in the town's working that and bring whatever I know to the discussion.
That we certainly don't have, as far as I'm aware, any particular technical expertise resident within the town staff. So if we could take advantage of our resident resources, that would be appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. DiStefano. Oh, Dan? Sure.
Dan Prickett, do I address? 4349 Seaforest. Thank you. Nancy and I have been here almost 25 years. Best decision we ever made was to come to Kiowa. We've enjoyed it. We love it here. But it's interesting, in my volunteering work, and almost everybody here has lots of time and a little bit of talent. That's how we are when we're retired. So I got the chance to do some things. I helped design and build this building as part of that committee, and I worked as a planning commission member for 6 years, and I served 2 terms on town council, and I learned a lot. One of the things I learned about was our partnerships, which we share with the resort, the developmental partners, the Conservancy, the Seabrook Opera, the town of Seabrook, the county, We don't always agree, often didn't agree on things. But we found ways to sit down, get them resolved. There is a solution there somewhere. It has been very disappointing, and I'm sure you guys feel the same way, to get to the point where one of our partners has ended up suing us. Somehow we got off track. And I know you're working on getting us back on track. But I can tell you, as a member of the community and all the people that I see, they're terribly disappointed. They hate to see us here. And I urge you to do everything, and I know you're trying, do everything you can to get the partnership back in place. We need it. Thank you.
So Dan, if you don't mind, I'll make a comment. Just, I would tell you that is my goal and Russ's goal as part of this mediation is to come out of this so that it is truly a win-win situation, and we can go have coffee with Jordan or go have a beer with Jordan or whatever. I don't know if we'll get there, but
make sure you pay for your beer, Luke. Make sure you pay for your beer.
yeah. I don't know if we'll get there. I'm going to get Russ to pay for my beer. I don't know if we'll
Good luck
get there,
with that.
but that's certainly, I take what you say really to heart is we're all neighbors here, and some of the partners have property here too, and that's a great thing. And we should get back to where we were 5 or 10 or 15 years ago, where this really was a group of neighbors who trusted and respected each other. And I sort of understand how we got to this place, but we don't have to be here much longer. We can solve this problem, and both sides come away pretty happy. And I think the town, the club members, the people who are not club members would be pretty happy as well. So I hope that's the outcome, and I hope this satisfies everybody.
Dave DiStefano, 31 Burroughs Hall. I've got a few things to go over. Most of them are very practical. The first thing is, which has been driving me crazy for the last 6 weeks, when you leave Mingo Point outbound before the bridge, there's a roofing shingle stuck on the road. Everybody sitting in this room, employees drive by it every day. Can we get that thing scraped off the road? It's just an annoyance, okay? Secondly, with respect to what you were talking about, Michael, with regard to EMT and emergency services, the Safety and Enforcement Committee at Kiowa, we had the fire chief give us about a 1-hour presentation. Most of that was on their improvements. And I know they have a brochure coming out, and Greg was there. So, I mean, they're planning a lot of stuff in that direction. And some of it's actually including Kika's security to get training in minimal emergency techniques. Next is those new yellow buttons. I've heard reports of 3 blowouts because of those. What's ironic about it, not only are they there and they're big, but they're actually outside of the yellow line. So something's got to be done because our safety, security people inform me there's been some blowouts because of that. You know, at that point in the road, people aren't going like the 10 miles an hour where the white ones are coming out. A lot of people are still going pretty fast. And one of the other things I've noticed, we've all noticed on this island, a lot of these contractors have trailers that maybe their tires aren't the greatest, and it's the trailer that's going to hit it if you get a little too close. So I don't know whose idea that was. It's got to be thought about. And there was one more thing. There was 4 things, and I'm going to forget the 4th one.
Roofing, EMT, buttons. You can come back.
I'll come up. And Michael, thank you for your service.
So, Maura, if you could hold for a minute, I do want to address the buttons issue since it was raised. It didn't do it in my initial update. So we did get some reports of some blown tires. We've asked for photos and additional information. Hasn't been forthcoming yet, but let's assume that those reports are true. Whether they simply brushed it, as they said, or they were actually trying to cut across the double yellow lines is not entirely clear as well. But just to back up a little bit, the reason those buttons were installed, and this was a project that we undertook with the Public Works Department, the construction firm that we hired had been doing work on road safety improvements, and our engineering firm, was that there was an identified very real risk of serious accident for people who are trying to exit Little Rabbit Lane, trying to take a left turn onto Kiawah Island Parkway, where they can see the one lane and judge, and particularly if it's stopped. But people, and I've seen them doing it, were jumping across the area that they're not supposed to be double across, the hatched lines, the double yellow lines, and accelerating in to try to get prematurely into the left lane entering the island. So that was the reason. We've also done some further exploration. These buttons are industry standard. They're kind of everywhere. But having said that, we are kind of taking a fresh look at whether they were properly installed. You noted they're outside the line, whether they should be on the line or inside the line, whether they're necessary outbound. They're still, we would believe, to avoid accidents. You shouldn't be coming across the hatched area, because that poses an accident risk. If you're intentionally doing that and you suffer damage, but these buttons are industry standard. They're designed, if you're going at kind of a normal speed and you don't have significantly overstressed tires, then there shouldn't be any issues. But obviously there have been 3 issues. So we are taking a look, and we will make adjustments as may be necessary and appropriate. But okay.
I was on the building committee for this building, not in the design phase, but in the construction phase. It dealt with LS3P a lot. I couldn't have been less impressed with an architectural firm, and we keep hiring them. I mean, just stop.
Ms. McElveen.
Maura McElveen, 146 Blue Heron Pond Road. I have 6 things, and I'll start with LS3P, just because that's where David left off. Only to note the following. They were hired in August of '22. They were going to deliver the comprehensive plan in April of '23. It's now September of '24. So I think the storm clouds should have been out there a while ago, but be that as it may, we're a year and a half off the timetable at this point, and I'm very sorry that it appears that the comprehensive plan has now been thrown back in staff's lap. Nothing you can do about it now, and I don't know if you can even give a projection of when we might get the comprehensive plan done, but it certainly is very late. 2, Dr. Heidingsfelder served on the ARP Joint Task Force, and I was wondering if you had any inkling or intention of announcing who might replace him on that. So that's number 2. 3, MUSC. On August 22nd, MUSC went to Seabrook. We were there. Did a presentation, it was Dr. Cawley and Dr. Cole, who's the president of MUSC, did a presentation on the building and in fact said, my recollection is that the Seabrook issues that they were working on had all been resolved, and in fact, they expected to put a spade in the ground that Sunday or Saturday. So they were just waiting on the town. So there's a disconnect, obviously, because it's now September 10th. So maybe somebody just needs to kind of follow up and figure out where it is. But he certainly intimated, Dr. Cawley and Dr. Cole intimated they were ready and they were ready to put the spade in. So, 4. Luke, when you did your update, and I understand the need to be discreet and the need not to discuss things, but what you said made me believe that the spit is also in or potentially in the discussions, the mediation discussions. And certainly, Ocean Pines and the parking questions are in the discussion, that I assume. You needn't say yes or no, but I merely point those two things out because Kika has certain rights under the RDA in the spit issue, and Kika has an MOU which covers parts of the Ocean Pines issues, and Kika is not in the mediation, so I'm merely, I guess, flagging that there are other parties' rights here that need to be considered. I'm not asking you to take them up, but I'm asking you to make sure they don't get compromised in some way. That's 4. 5th, Madeline was talking about public comment on the terms of service of council people. That was a change made in 2020 to put them all to 4 years, staggered. Then in 2022, I think, they were staggered even further. They were extended actually by a year. So Mr. Belt had run for a 2-year term and he then became a 3-year person. And Dr. Heidingsfelder and Mr. Berner had run for a 4-year term and they became 5-year council people. And that was done because there was a state legislative either enactment or at least a bill on the floor that would have required us to change the year in which we held our elections. So prophylactically and anticipating that would pass, Dr. Heidingsfelder, lucky him, got a 5-year term. And now he's leaving. By my count, he has 3 more years remaining. He has now on his position until November of 27, I believe. So I understand the concern over 4 years. I merely point out that Dr. Heidingsfelder, completion of his term is 3 years. I also think, obviously, council at the time in 2020 had a reason for extending from 2 years to 4 years. I would say that there is a lot of work, and we know that, and we see that in each one who sits behind this desk. There is a lot of work, and you are doing it. And that also means there's a lot of runway you need to get up to speed, especially if you don't regularly attend meetings or watch the meetings prior to running. So I would actually argue that a 4-year term is probably the right amount of time, but that's just my 2 cents. Lastly, there was a recent ordinance which was about covering what I would call the flatbed backs of trucks to make sure that trash and debris did not fall out. At the same time, the ordinance requires roll-offs at construction sites to be covered. That's not happening. It's not happening at all. So I don't know where to go. I don't know who's the enforcement mechanism for that, but I know that roll-ups are not getting covered because there are probably 5 construction sites on my street alone that are not covered. Thank you.
Thank you, Maura. I just I'll just comment on the second item you raised with regard to committee assignments, and there will need to be some adjustment of committee assignments. We do now have 2 council member candidates. They're both in the room, and one of them will be elected in November 5th, in which case we will need to make some adjustments. I haven't made any decisions about what happens in the interim. MUSC, we provided the update on MUSC. Kika's, I don't know if you want to talk about the first issue she raised, but Kika and other stakeholders do have rights. And so they continue to have rights, and Kika certainly has an interest in what happens at Ocean Pines and the Cape and Cape Point Road by virtue of, at the very least, the MOU. And so that is still an issue that is out there. I don't know if you want to address the first part that she raised.
Yeah, I guess I would just say that I think I can say both sides are aware of Kika's rights, and both sides are focused on their own individual rights. I think I can stop there. But thank you for your comments.
What I have noted in the past, more in that regard, is, I for now kind of several months saying that there is a path in which you can achieve a legally binding outcome on all parties, and there's a process that involves stakeholder interest to be heard, and then ultimately everything can be tied up in a bow. We're starting down that process, but that doesn't, this process at this point in time doesn't extinguish the rights of any party to be heard, and indeed, ultimately, anything coming out of the mediation, at the very least, would have to come back before council, and there would be a public process associated with that.
Yeah, so the mediation is non-binding. It's binding, subject to council resolution. And I can say we are not usurping any of Kiowa's rights in our negotiations.
So, and just on that, maybe council doesn't kind of want us to go, town attorney doesn't want us to go down this path, but the mediation would ultimately be approved by council, could be a binding on the town and the counterparty, but the process by which to bind all parties is outlined in statute. And we've talked about that path before. Covering trucks, I know this has been a concern. You want to address that? Okay, please do. No? Yeah, go ahead.
So this was something I brought to the environmental committee shortly before I handed over that responsibility to Madeline, and then she pushed it forward, and we had the second reading in July. I have the same observation. There are 6, 7, 8 just within walking distance with my dog that are on a regular basis not covered, not in the evening, and especially not on the weekends. They were covered though for Debbie. That was at least something. But I communicated already with Stephanie that we really have to enforce this. I mean, we need to really get our hands on this, which is for dumpsters probably easier if you pay attention as a code enforcement officer. Unfortunately, Mike is not here anymore. The bigger problem that we have to tackle, and we probably still need a strategy for this, is how we remind trucks and pickup trucks and their trailers to be covered when they're driving. It's probably less of an issue inbound, but in particular it's an issue outbound, because that's when they lose their yard debris and their waste from construction, etc. There we probably have to get a little creative. But we've done that for a clear purpose, to avoid that something is blown into our beautiful native environment, and we have to stop that. So I think the code enforcement team really need to up their game here. The reason why I brought it and felt comfortable bringing this ordinance was because we saw other violation numbers going down for them. So I felt like, okay, there is room now to do it. Now we need to do it. Right? And we cannot just let it go like this. So we need to be enforcing the dumpsters and be a little bit more creative with the trucks.
Well, it's important and critical that that community members, if they identify a violation, let us know and send it in, so code enforcement, hopefully in real time, if resources are available, can go and issue a citation as appropriate. The fact of the matter is that we've got a 10-mile long island, mile and a half or so wide, and we've got basically 2 1.5 kind of effectively day code enforcement officers and a couple overnight. So there are a lot of ordinances to enforce.
Right, let me counter that a little bit. First of all, I'm not a big fan of asking our community members to point out neighbors. Yeah, I think I have a very bad feeling about this, and not only because I'm German. It's much easier. Our building department knows every single construction site on this island at any given moment. That's where the dumpsters are. Just give them a list. And that's where they drive by. They don't need to drive by every part of this island. They drive by today, this portion and those street numbers where we know there is construction, so there will be a dumpster. It's very easy. It's very simple, right? As I said, the truck beds and the pickup truck and the trailer is a little bit more tricky to how to do this in a safe way, but the dumpsters should really not be an issue for the code enforcement teams. Neither a day nor at
It
night.
seems pretty reasonable, and that's certainly in terms of kind of allocating resources, that's something we can certainly take a look at. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, Carol, Ms. Medendorf.
Carol Medendorf, Parkside. Your discussion on the beach club chairs has been near and dear to me because I came here for this beautiful beach, and I know humans and wildlife both appreciate the beach, and I encourage the council anytime we can do something to enhance the beauty of it and not allow so many chairs, tables, umbrellas, boxes, whatever, from our beach. That would be appreciated. So think about that every time you have this contract with all the public, the businesses on the island. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Mr. Pramar.
Mark Pramar, 81 Dungannon Hall.
Remember, you're under a gag order.
No, this
So
is
you gave away that.
I'm speaking as a property owner resident for quite a while, and I've witnessed many people run for office and volunteer. And one of the common denominators, there can be many reasons why people run for office or volunteer, some of which are a particular way of thinking at the beginning and then during the process evolve over time. But ultimately, everyone wants to make a difference in our community. And I just wanted to thank you for the work you've done on both capacities as a resident. We may not have always agreed on things, but the one thing that I can agree with is you wanted to make a difference, and you have. Thank you.
Mark. Any other citizen comments? If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Council comments? Council member
I'm sorry.
comments?
Fair point. Since you raised it, you get to start.
Oh, shit. All right, just 2 points. Well, in the beginning, Dan, thank you for your commentary, which I think matches pretty much also what I said. And as my first recommendation to the remaining council and soon-to-be future council setup, maybe you guys should think about not banning shibumis. Is that the right word? Shibumi? Right? Maybe you guys should consider banning Aikiwa, and that will help to reunite this community. Anyway, so the real thing I wanted to say as a recommendation from me is related to traffic. I think this is, beside resilience and flood management topics and safety topics, it's probably really, and I think you mentioned that, Brad, in the very beginning from that survey that we are doing, that traffic is a big topic. And just as an anecdotal point, so I took the liberty to observe my intersection, which is Governor Drives and that little, Shell Creek Landing where we live. But Governor Drive is the road that passes closer to our house. And I sat there in the morning from 8 o'clock to 9:30. And I think at some point I stopped counting because there were more than 500 vehicles passing me in one of the two directions. 500 vehicles. And I sometimes have to stand at that intersection with my dog when I walk her, probably 3, 4, 5 minutes to wait to safely cross the road. That's the situation of traffic we have. Also anecdotal, I did the same thing at Beachwalker Drive. 10 vehicles in an hour, same time. So I think that's one of the things we need to really put into perspective. We have a traffic issue in certain areas of our island, and yes, maybe there will be some more on certain other parts because of developments, but the main traffic issue we have is on our main road, which is Kiowa Island Parkway into Governor's Drive, and then I think a little bit part of Ocean Course Drive. I want to remind Council that I made a proposal, a 3-tier proposal back in July of 2023, how to mitigate traffic. And I really want or would like to bring this back to your attention. One of the 3 elements actually Kika implemented, maybe not to the extent that I would hope for, but we certainly now have, Dave, help me, 5, 6 more days where construction is not allowed on the island before and after holidays, I think it is, no? 5 or 6. I would have hoped a few more, but at least that's the first good step. But I think the new council should really be more forward-thinking about how we can eliminate the overburdening traffic, not traffic at all, but I mean, how can we limit the traffic on our main roads so that we remain livable? And I do believe, based on the counts that I did back in July, but also more recently again, a major portion of the traffic we experience, particularly in the morning and the afternoon hours, are related to construction workers. So I would really, really hope that the next council will take that up a little bit more, with focus to bring it to, again, a very reasonable conclusion. Last comment, please vote. We have November 5 coming up. This is the date where we elect a lot, but also the new council members. So I really want to remind everybody that we have an outstanding candidate on the ballot with a multitude of experience in servicing our community here for years. So I hope that you go, because this island deserves a higher participation of our residents in that voting process for our council than we have seen in the past. So I hope that combination with our general election will help to bring a lot of people to vote and hopefully vote for the right candidate. And that was a private statement because as of now, I think I'm a private citizen again.
No,
At least it feels for me like that.
You're actually not for another
100%,
3
but-
days, so. Councilmember Farrell?
I think in the interest of time, I'm going to
Councilmember Kay?
pass.
Yes, I'd like to answer Maura's question about the ARB work group. When we learned that Michael was going to be leaving council, we appointed a series of conversations, appointed Diana Mezzanotte to replace Michael. And in the meantime, Sandy Devine had also been accompanying Michael on several of the sessions where we would go to a full ARB meeting to kind of get a really solid handle on the processes and the procedures that were happening when the ARB would meet on Wednesday to review all of the cases in front of it. So, so those are the 2 people who have been involved from the town's perspective, but as we are getting toward the point where we know that the transition is going to be made more fully over to Kika, I am not sure that we'll add anybody else from the town to be representative on that work group. And then secondly, more on your the issue about the roll-ups. I'll be back on island in a week, and I will commit to you that I will I'll make that a priority to see what I can do about enforcement. So thanks for raising those issues. And then, yeah, I'll add to Michael's please vote, but I will also add one more tremendous thank you to Michael for his dedicated service. It's been invaluable.
I don't have any further comments. Now may I entertain a motion to adjourn?
Oh, you can. So
Thank you.
Second.
We are adjourned. Thank you all.